I ovo je u stvari, možemo reći, kuća budućnosti, jer sa ovakvim jednim sistemom mi klasičnu gradnju, beton, ciglu, opeku, ostavljamo daleko u prošlost. Same prednosti su očigledne. Ono što je najbitnije sa ovakvim sistemom da se gradi brzo, čvrsto i ekonomično i da imamo mnogo manje opterećenja, odnosno mnogo manju težinu od same konstrukcije. Sistem je u suštini dosta i jednostavan. Problem je samo iskalkulisati, uraditi statičke proračune. Kad pričamo o visini ovakvih konstrukcija, mi možemo da idemo do 20 metara. A kad pričamo o rasponu samonosivog plafona, tu smo negdje 13 pa čak i 14 metara. Ovdje možete vidjeti jedan presek zida i plafona samostojeće konstrukcije, a sa desne strane imate jedan cjelokupni sklop od spuštenog plafona, nosive konstrukcije od CV profila pa do podnog završnog sloja. U ovom slučaju date su Gifaflor ploče, to je proizvod našeg Knauf integrala, koji su frezovane i pripremljene za razvod za podna grijanja. Ukupna debljina ovakvog jednog sistema jeste oko 34 cm. Naravno, podložni su raznim varijacijama. Mi možemo u odnosu na zahtjeve koje imamo u samom projektu da radimo razne varijacije, ali je bitno da je ovo jedna osnova, jedna baza od koje dalje razvijamo sva potrebna rješenja. Također u Knauf Cocoon sistemu radimo i fasadne zidove, fasadnu opeku postavljamo daleko iza sebe, znači idemo sa novim modernim rješenjima, s tim što u slučaju spoljašnjeg vanjskog zida uvodimo još jedan naš proizvod, a to je cementna ploča Aquapanel. Ploča koja je apsolutno otporna na sva mehanička oštećenja i na vremenske uticaje, ploča koja je vodoodbojna, 100% vodoodbojna i ploča koja je protivpožarna u klasi A1. Ono što je interesantno kad se rade ovakvi zidovi jeste da kad se postavi ploča Aquapanel na konstrukciju, kad se samo obrade spojevi, znači bez završnog fasadnih salojeva, lijepka za armiranje mrežice i završnog sloja, takva sistem, znači samo postavljenih Aquapanel ploča može da stoji 6 mjeseci, znači da se ne radi završni fasadni sloj. Opet kažem, razne varijacije su moguće u odnosu na zahtjeve koji se traže samim projektom. Ovo je jedan prototip samom Cocoon transformer sistema koji je predstavljen prošle godine u martu mjesecu na Knauf Werktage. Knauf Werktage je sajam koji Knauf sam organizuje, dakle u sopstvenoj organizaciji u Njemačkoj, i tu je data, tada u stvari prezentovan je prvi put Knauf Cocoon sistem i ovdje možete vidjeti, znači, fasadni zid, međuspratnu konstrukciju i unutrašnji pregradni zid. Opet kažem, apsolutno je sve suve gradnje, sve je suvomontažno i možemo da radimo građevine apsolutno do 20 metara visine i ne treba nam nikakva druga nosiva konstrukcija. Par primjera koji su rađeni, jedan među prvima je Trumpft u Švajcarskoj. Opet kažem, Cocoon je firma koja je iz Švajcarske i onda je logično možda i bilo da je prvi objekat tamo rađen. I ovdje možete vidjeti baš dio međuspratne konstrukcije koji je rađen u tom sistemu. Profile, popričnu feder šinu i oblogu od gipskartonske ploče, u ovom slučaju dijamant. I još jedan projekat Soprazzo Villa gdje se vidi da je cjelokupan objekat odrađen u Knauf Cocoon transformer sistemu. Znači, apsolutno nemamo nikakvih drugih nosive konstrukcije. I još jedna interesantna stvar vezano za ovaj sistem je mogućnost izrade prefabrikovanih elemenata. U ovom slučaju samo je riječ o fasadi, spoljašnjem fasadnom zidu koji je već unaprijed bio pripremljen u fabrici od, opet kažem, odgovarajućih profila, izolacije između profila, sa unutrašnje strane, tu se vidi na ovom slajdu, je obloga od gipsanih ploča, sa vanjske strane obloga od Aquapanel ploča i takvi elementi su donešeni i ugrađeni su na licu mjesta na objektu. Čak su i ovi uglovi odrađeni od prefabrikovanih elemenata. Prednost svakako ovakvog jednog sistema je to što se radi čvrsto, brzo i što se radi precizno. Znači ovdje je bila prevashodno, apsolutno riječ o preciznosti i o brzini, o samoj brzini gradnje. Na kraju želim da napomenem da je KNAUF grupa u saradnji sa institutom Federico II iz Napolija izdala jednu publikaciju koja je dosta interesantna i koja se može naći u slobodnoj prodaji. To su stvari lake konstrukcije čelične za trusna područja. Svi znamo da je Crna Gora u izrazito trusnom području i jedno od tema na panelu koje je organizovano u sklopu evropskog projekta ELIZA jesu bile upravo ovakve konstrukcije i način na koji treba graditi, a sve je bilo prouzrokovano velikim zemljotresom u L'Aquili koji je bio prije par godina. Na ovom panelu rečeno je u stvari da su ovakve kuće kuće budućnosti i u ovoj knjizi dati su mnoge varijacije, dizajn, case studies, aplikacije i primijenjena su skoro sva naša rješenja koje mi imamo u sistemima suve gradnje. Ja vam se ovim putem, ovo je bilo, opet kažem, kratko izlaganje i zahvaljujem se na pažnji. Hvala.
Hvala Iva i hvala KNAUF-u. So we continue with this year's mentors as well, Cosmos Architects. So the workshop that we did in the past week we have done with Cosmos Architects and Mikael Stenstrom, who is also here. Leonid was here from Cosmos Architects, but he had to leave 2 days ago, and Artyom is here to present on their behalf. Artyom, can you come up, please? Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Diana. Yeah, even though I come mainly to give this lecture, but I got sick last day, so you have to sort me if I'll say something very weird. Anyway, the lecture will consist of 2 parts. First part is more real projects and the other one more speculative projects. And if the first part will be too long, probably will maybe cut down the second part. I want to start from a little introduction about our I didn't know. Sorry, it's not exactly what I expect. Okay, so our office Cosmos, which initially consists of 3 partners. On the right you can see, on the left you can see Leonid, in the middle is myself, and on the right is Nikolai Martinov. And in the very beginning this collaboration started like collaboration of the friends who've been spread around the world and try to do some competitions together. Then we become a bit more stable, but this connection through different continents and different countries still remain here. And even now, like, even though we're working very closely together last time in person, I've seen Leonid, for example, it was 3 months ago. This is how typical office meetings looks like. We're working from trains, airports, or different places. And one of them visions I want to share with you before showing the projects, it's so-called Cosmos House concept. Cosmos, it's not only about like rockets and stars, it's also about the space which unites us, but also we put the Greek meaning of cosmos like order as the opposite to chaos, disorder. And to us it's important to, as an architect, to find inspiration not only in architectural references, but also about in many other things which surround us, which surround actually architectural practice. That's how usually architects, classically architects imagine the city. Beautiful, clean, very well designed, and very controlled and organized. But in fact, cities nowadays more looks like that. It's a mess of infrastructure, of different facilities which organize and feed all the contemporary life, and which impossible to eliminate, and sometimes even difficult to organize and bring to certain order. But in these infrastructural objects, there are many beauty and even many inspiration. And we try to find this inspiration in very practical things and bring it in our practice and our design. like even road marks or MAP systems of the buildings, which apparently is very beautiful. And to this topic was dedicated one of the exhibition we did, which called Cosmos Cows, where for each project we put non-architectural references which feed this project and feed the idea, and then which was organized in our architecture in Cosmos. So it was a combination of cows, the references we used, and Cosmos as our architecture. And the first project I want to show, it's Emma. We showed it actually here 2 or 3 years ago. We were here, we were giving lecture. It was a very nice time. Anyway, I decided to start from this object. It was renovation of abandoned post-industrial area in the center of Moscow. And for this type of areas, there is already a certain recipe how to renovate it, like to sand the brick and put some old furniture. But that's exactly what we didn't want to do. And we tried to think how to create, and from the very beginning, this space should be, it should work very much with social media, and with the different performances and different events. And we try to understand, operating with a very low budget, what can we do with this space and how to take the advantage of this. Then we come up with the idea of skin. So we have to just find new skin, more fancy skin for the package for these buildings. And that was one of the first sketches which try to represent kind of shiny, interesting atmosphere, at the same time with a which should be neutral enough to operate, to accommodate very different events which supposed to happen in this space. That's the model, conceptual model of our project. It's like the space minus buildings. So you can see the surfaces of facades, but you don't see the buildings behind them. And that's what that's actually was our project. So what we did, we decided to introduce new skin for these buildings and divide all the spaces in different small courtyards with a feature in each of them, special feature in each of them. Thinking about material and bearing in mind our low budget, we come up with a insulation foil, the one you usually see on the ductworks on the ceilings, and which not assumed to be a facade material. Nevertheless, we decided to experiment with this skin, with this material, and introduce this foil skin, which was wrapping up all the surfaces of the buildings. And this one of the additional features, like this lighting, like this lighting surface on top, creating a special ambient atmosphere inside. The other important part of this project was certain abstraction. It's kind of, even though it's quite literal, but at the same time, most of the elements allows multiple interpretation, including this disc, but it's not only interpretation, it was also function actually to abstract quite ugly office building behind. And the other option of this, the other purpose of this element, it was a selfie spot. I mean, now it sounds a bit funny, but 5 years ago when we were designing it, the social media wasn't so much involved in architectural design. And to us it was very interesting to try to design a space which was at the very beginning work as a performance space, where also you have a selfie spot where people would immediately tag the place, tag themselves, and that's exactly how it works like. And one of the events which happened there, it was a wedding of our friend and ex-partner. That's how in social media looked this place, which flooded that summer pretty much all the Moscow social medias. And that's one of the photos from Instagram. And the interesting thing, like how it was connected with the social media, with the real media, that this photo made by iPhone from Instagram went to the front page of Bauwelt. It's a big German-speaking magazine. But then it was demolished, and since this this space was designed virtually, actually via WhatsApp, we decided to publish a book to continue virtual life in a physical life, so virtual design in a physical object. We published a book which was actually all the process of the design, all our WhatsApp chat, published in one book without, black lines, they hiding from you very rude things, but the rest you can read pretty much clearly. The next, sorry, I'll have a sip of water. Sorry. The next project I want to show you, called Nike Airbox. It was a competition for Nike, for new sports center for the Nike, and they asked to combine in one building technologies and drive of the brand. Mainly they argue the drive of the brand as a brand of suburbs, in a way it's true, and we look closer to the suburbs, to these homogeneous and sometimes gloomy areas, and try to find certain beauty in there. And apparently one of the main things of suburbs, it's landmarks of suburbs, it's billboards. And we got impressed by their open frame structures and beauty of them, and decided to design a building inspired by the billboards and structures. The other important thing for our building was statement that the wall should be more than a wall, so we didn't want to design a building. We want to design more infrastructural object, kind of workout facilities, which could be adjusted by users, and which could be used by users depending on their braveness, muscle strength. So each leap, each facade of the building receive additional function, additional meaning. Like you can see the right bottom one, it's an entrance, so it's a kind of billboard, it's a place for the announcement of all the events and life of the sports center. On top of it, with the lighting system and the scoreboard, it's a leap which looks towards football pitch. The incline down, it's so-called 3D workout, and the horizontal on the left side, on the bottom left side, it's a lounge. That's how competition model looks like, and that was one of the final renders. This bird eye view shows how different sides of the building organize the space around the building, because it was also not very easy to this sports center should work for different types of visitors, and apparently football players and basketball players and runners, they don't really like each other. So to us it was one of the challenges was how to organize on this tricky shape of the site that way that different groups of visitors wouldn't overlap with each other so much. That's already built object. It's one day before the opening. You can see on the bottom right corner the pavilion itself, and then in front of it the whole perspective of Gorky Park in the center of Moscow. And that's the photo of complete structure. The other important thing which we want to achieve here, the other important reference to us, it was membrane. And membrane, with its transparency, with its openness, which could breathe and provide different, let's say, energy, a flow of energy through, to us was very much important to use this reference as a symbol of transparency and accessibility of sport, because the sports center works for free. Anyone can get in, anyone can go for any section in there, and each side, each facade has access from different sides. So to us was another reference of like sport facilities and membrane, which makes sports accessible and available. Here's the 3D workout facilities from the back of the pavilion, and that was the opening ceremony. Here, these happy people, it was on the opening day with some happy children and guests. The happy sun-turned guy, it's Ronaldo, the football player, He come just for the opening, but anyway, I think he had happy moments in there. Speaking about layout of the building, we wanted to provide even an interior part, provide connectivity with from each side of the building with all sides of the park. So we introduced these long corridors, and doesn't matter where you're located, you every time can see the light going through the building, and you have a feeling of transparency, connectivity, and greenery inside the pavilion. That's a view of one of these corridors. The other element, the red square on the plan, it was showers and toilets and changing rooms. So we decided in our gray, silver, half-transparent building, introduce only one spot, which would be total red, and that would be showers and toilets. That's how the building looks in a rainy day. Pretty infrastructural. The other project which I want to show you, it was a project for Swiss Design Awards. Speaking about materials and indirect references, this project was inspired by non-architectural, so-called non-architectural materials and elements. These elements which pops up on the building on any architecture in any city all the time, but architects usually pretend they don't exist, or it's not their business to deal with that. I'm speaking now about anti-bird spikes or safety mats or protection scaffoldings or road cones or spring wire, something what architects pretend somehow usually don't work. So to us it was interesting, and nowadays these elements, they forms a lot of aesthetics. I mean, of course, we can still pretend that don't exist and probably don't show up, but they will. And we decided to, like the second name of our concept was New Order. So we decided to take a look on a classical Greek order, classical architecture, and try to build up certain order out of these materials, introducing them in in a new way. So the important thing was that each material is working in a non-structural way, not the way it's supposed to be used, and we try to experiment if it's possible to find any beauty and architectural drama in this in these materials. Yeah, and to us was important to combine kind of soft materials and sharp spikes or sharp razor wire placed on top of soft tubes. I think there's a lot of potential, beauty potential in this type of materials, which somehow architects don't so much operate with. Artificial Arcadia, it's another project which we did for Switzerland. It was an open competition for to represent Switzerland in Quadriennale of Arts in next year in Prague, and we decided to take a part of it. Speaking about Switzerland, what represents Switzerland? Of course, it's landscape. And that's what attracts so much tourists, and attract even back in the days. And then for the tourists, there was built a lot of infrastructure, like amazing bridges and viaducts, which becomes attraction by themselves. And Swiss infrastructure, like trains, of course. At the same time, Swiss landscape, it's not so much wild landscape anymore. It's completely inhabited. Each mountain penetrated by many tubes, by many engineered systems which maintain these mountains and provide facilities for the tourists. And this is another thing which also marks, which represents Switzerland, these engineered technologies. These technologies also provide new layout, new artificial landscape on top of Swiss landscape. Like on the left photo, you can see so-called bow profile. These poles, they marks the boundaries of the buildings. Before the building will be built, they're obliged to show to the public what kind of dimensions it would take. And this looks quite impressive. And the other thing, it's effect of the tourist or over-tourism, what was speaking today earlier. It's the effect of this mass of people who's coming to see the sites and the natural landmarks and start slightly ruining them. So the other part of Swiss industry, Swiss tourist industry, is protection of this land. So we decided Yeah, and to collect all of this information, now it's also very much digital, because they scan in all the people who's coming there, calculating the data, bringing to one data center and calculating the amount and like what kind of action should be taken. So the idea was to bring together these several elements of the artificial landscape. As you can see here, it's almost landscape and almost artificial. So we decided to introduce these four elements, these three elements. It's the fabric represents the landscape, the poles underneath, which represents the engineered system of Switzerland and the technologies, and the screen, which represents digital part of this of the system. And the most interesting that it all works with the people, that the landscape reacts on position of the people. That's how it looks from the top when all the scanners scan position of the people and represent the, and then translate this position as a diagram on the screen in front. And then the landscape, so yeah, here as you can see this diagram, the poles, the fabric, the screen, and the little observation bench. And interesting that position of the people adjust the shape of the landscape by this engineered, by these technical devices like these poles. And that's more or less how the installation is supposed to look like. We just complete the mock-ups with these adjustable linear actuators which adjust the height and the configuration of the landscape. I want to show you, but apparently I'm technically not so much advanced, so I didn't manage to bring in the video in our presentation. So probably will show it next time already built. The other project which I want to show, it was a competition for House of Internet. I know it sounds very strange, and to us, like when we heard about this task, everyone asked, like, does Internet need a house? Nevertheless, the regulations of the competition was to renovate this building and make out of it House of Internet. Thinking about Internet, we also think it's like technology of the future. We're also thinking about the future, and that's how future represented in cinema and in arts. And it's funny because if you look at the colors, they're all very bluish, greenish, cold, and all the materials are very glossy, polished, artificial. That's how we probably imagine the future. At the same time, if we think about the advantage of technologies, that's how people imagine the future when they have the technologies. They don't think about glossy plastic corridors, but more about wood decks and somewhere at a nice spot. So thinking about being impressed by technologies, we looked at this building, at the initial building and initial architecture of this building. It's a modernist architecture, consists of solid and opaque parts. It's a surface and void, and decided to emphasize it. And thinking about material, we understood we should not this time be impressed so directly by technologies, but more probably by the advantage which technology gives to people. So we decided to design more city chalet, warm wood, where it's nice to spend time, taking all the advantages of the technologies without being captured by them. And I think this wood actually works quite good with the architecture of the building. It provides a nice scale and nice warmness, and I think that's one of the approaches probably which could be applied on this a bit brutal modernism. Now I want to show you several speculative projects which we did for Switzerland again. Last summer we made an exhibition in Swiss Architecture Museum in Basel, and this project it was done for Basel. It was our view of what could be adjusted in Basel, in the city with almost perfect public space where each cobblestone is polished, each light is at the place, everything is absolutely regulated and complete. And to us was interesting but at the same time it doesn't function absolutely perfectly. And we tried to understand what could be the, let's say, the gaps in the system. Where else should architect work to improve the public space. So, hidden park. Yes, in Switzerland, in Basel, it's amazing over the summer. But over the winter, sometimes it's absolutely horrible. It's gray, dark, no one in the street, and people somehow don't gather in many spaces. And it could be really gloomy this time. So we try to find the potential to make alternative public space over the winter, and found in Basel, in the middle of Basel, there is a Birzik River, which flows through such a nice tunnel. And it used to be not the big river, but it was the river which was coming to Rhine, and it was connecting all the main places in the city. So we decided to take the advantage of the, let's say, enclosed ecosystem where you can create any type of super nature, and propose to create such a hidden park which could connect all the main public squares, all the main squares and the public areas of the city, and which you can spend and enjoy time and nature over the gray, frosty, rainy, boring days. Art drop. Apart from boring November days, Basel also famous with Art Basel. It's one of the biggest contemporary art fairs in the world. And the other symbol of Basel is a ferry. It's very interesting type of transportation which still exists, which use only energy of the river to move from one area to another one. And to us was interesting how to develop this system, how to develop the existing system of transportation, and what could we add and propose. And for already existing ferries, we propose to add one more, but which would be floating public space, floating exhibition space, which could become alternative space not only for exhibiting art, but also for different performances of arts, and not only in different events. And in these terms, the size of the Rhine, size of the river would become a spectator seat, and the ferry itself could become a floating stage. Defense. The other important thing to know about Basel, it's architecture. And one of the greatest collectors of contemporary architecture is Novartis. It's a big pharmaceutical company which has enormous campus in Basel. It's a very beautiful area with probably all Pritzker laureates built at least one building with amazing landscape, but it's accessible only for workers. I mean, of course, you can go for guided tour once in several months, but basically this area, big piece of area of Basel, excluded from public access. And we decided that we have to rethink this idea, we have to rethink this position, and this example, so-called Filipinian maids, this phenomenon exists in Bangkok, in Hong Kong. The place where a lot of Filipinos going to work as maids in the families and living all their lives in the family, serving them, and they have only one day in a week, Sunday, when they're free to have some free time. What they do, and it's the time when all the public buildings closed, so they gather in front of the steps and gate of the main headquarters of different companies. Like here, I think it's some headquarters of bank, I don't see now. And they turn it in the alternative public space. The idea of this image is mix of use, it's combination of use, it's intensification of use. When one space could be used for different purposes, depending on time of the day or of the week. And that's exactly what we thought about campus, a Novartis campus, that now it's a gated community for very selected amount of people which can get in there. And we decided that the fence of the campus should have ability to be open up, and then instead of being area of installation, it will become like area of activation of public activity. And the interesting thing that campus works, it's a very rigid regime of function of the campus, from 8 to 6, and then not before, not after. No one works on the weekend, and that's exactly the time when people go into the park. So to us, it would make a lot of sense to open it and give this land for this time when it's not used for the people. And it's important to understand, the world is not so big, and if we'll build for every type of function, every type of user, new facilities, soon the world will just have no place, no empty spot for the new building. We have to think more about intensification, how to combine in one spot more actions, how to combine more visitors in one place, and make this combination smart and efficient. Terma Urbana, it's the other project for Basel, and as I said, sometimes, especially in autumn, it could be very gray, very cold, and not much people in there. And we decided that we have to somehow warm up these moments, these places, and decided to combine tradition of Roman spas, which are quite developed in Switzerland, and also traditional Basel fountains, and just propose to warm up the water over there, where during cold, rainy day, people can enjoy the water, foam each other, and feel a bit more warmer. The important thing of this project that sometimes to activate public space, there's no need to build something big. We can just, again, change the regime of use or add something very little subtle, like change of the temperature or music or lighting conditions to activate and force the place to work differently. As some of you know, Switzerland is a very regulated country. Each thing in the country have its own order, time, and sequence. Everything should be done according to certain plan, and even trash. For each type of trash, there is a particular day when you have to put it out in particular time, in particular package, and everything is very well regulated. But sometimes, and it's not only about trash, it's about also other aspects of life, but sometimes it's also cause not only order, but also this order become cause like certain, let's say, boringness, rigidness, and toughness of life. And we decided that sometimes a bit of deregulation of the regulation probably could be, it was a bit of a joke project, but we proposed alternative plan for Switzerland, how to deregulate themselves, where we, with the same Swiss precisions, propose different public activities like going to barbecue, to the zoo, or for love adventure. And the last project I want to show you, called Borderland. This project is about so-called, it was inspired, to be honest, by our personal life, traveling every time around, in between different countries and having friends of pretty much everywhere. Certain moment we realized that we got a feeling that there is a certain so-called international community appears on the earth. That means that it's a community of professionals who doesn't feel so much belonging to any particular country. They more belong to certain cultural context. They freely traveling from one place to another one. They share in one language and they building up one culture. And it's important that in the initial place where people were born at doesn't make any sense, and even the occupation changed so many times. But these people, this community, doesn't have any country. And at the same time, if we look at the map, we can see that this length of the borders is enormous, and borders in between countries, even though it's supposed to be the most active place where two cultures clash and there's a friction in between, and that's the place where supposed to be the most active, it's the other way around. It's a place of abundance. There are many regulations which doesn't allow us to build anything, to act somehow in these areas. And we decided to take the advantage of this gap in the world map and propose to create one country which would connect all the countries in the world. And this country would call Borderland. That's how it could look on the world map. This white zone which goes through all the borders and connects all the countries in the world, where you can freely travel and get in one place and then achieve the other place, and traveling only through one country. This country also we propose, that's a flag and a coat of arms we propose to for this new country. The flag It's a dotted line which indicates in architectural drawings. With a dotted line we usually indicate in something invisible, which represents the more mental, let's say, belongings to this country, to this nation, than than the physical one. And the coat of arms, its interpretation of the road sign cancellation of all the restrictions. That means over there all the rules should be created a certain anarchy, where all the rules should be created by this community and the way they want to live without having much regulation from a side. So this speculative representation of certain, I would say, more intellectual country, more intellectual connection between people all around the world, which should freely circulate, exchange information, and enjoy themselves in our time. If someone have any questions, I would be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Artyom. So, do you guys have any questions? We can pass the mic around. What I was kind of wondering about the projects that, I mean, we've seen Emma, of course, when you were here as well, and even before that, through the lecture of the photographer that actually took photos of Emma.
Yuri Palmin.
Yeah, Yuri. And then you continue to kind of investigate these non-existing projects as well. And this is really interesting because it's really, in a way, similar to what we've done here together or what we have been doing before. So for you, is there a next step in this, especially in Basel with so many restrictions?
In Basel with so many restrictions. Well, it's not an easy question. I'm just thinking how to reply interesting and not in a boring way, because to reply, it's a very complex and about the next steps, because of course like we face in like all architects many architectural challenges, but probably the main thing we are focusing on now is well, not the main, but one of the things which is to us is very interesting now. It's understand this switch in between public and private, which was caused by social media and basically media, that everything is accessible any moment. And if back in the days, for example, you can be, and how architects should react on that, because architecture is like one of the complex things. It's very innovative science which try to operate with very conservative meanings, like, I don't know, living, eating, and so on. But since the 20th century, probably there wasn't such a big shift in these terms. I mean, in terms of like social life, of course, like many social systems was changed, but basic needs, basic meaning of like working space, leisure space, probably remained the same. But last years, it changed, I think, dramatically because of development of technologies. When now, like myself, I said I can work now from here, sitting down there and sending some emails, or from train, from wherever. And also meaning of, or many people working from their bedroom and even doing Skype sitting in the bed. But also the meaning of public and private. If back in the days I could build a wall and close the door, like build a castle, and no one would ever reach me, now it's impossible, because since you're in social media, you can build any castle you want, but I can go on your Facebook page and write you whatever, or write in media, and the next second everyone will know about it. And it hurt people much, much more. So also this like, and what is actually private and public? Being physically in a not comfortable situation in the street, in between unknown people, doesn't hurt people so much when someone doing something virtually with them, but among like people like who knows them. So this change, like this switch of meaning of public, private, also in terms of space, like because now we combine all the processes in one, basically loft typology or studio typology, when you have one room where you sleep, meet friends, eat, I don't know, everything. Yeah, that's one of the things we're trying to investigate, if trying to reply short.
This is, I mean, we also talked about, a little bit about this yesterday, but it's also the way you work reminds me of this constant thought that I have, that availability is such a big issue today, because we are really so available. And as architects, and we talked about this last night, Vedran Mimic actually talked about this, that we are somehow obliged to participate and to be activists in a way as well, which is also could be recognized in your projects. And through social media, we make us so much available that we always feel also kind of invited or obliged to participate. But I also think what's important to mention, and especially because of young architects, the students that were here and the others, it's importance of these projects. One of the projects, you haven't showed it, but it's one that we really loved, is your installation at SAM Museum, which was really big thing in social media. Projects like this are actually the projects that could even set careers for very young architects, which I think it's very, I mean, because they create discussion, they even sometimes create more than discussion, maybe even intercourse, but this is really, really kind of important for them.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I also like what I would add, coming back to the last project I showed, it's very important to make self-initiated project not only for yourself, but also to society to rise up discussion. And here what's important to understand, that the scale of the project really doesn't matter. Like you can operate with the worldwide scale or like scale of the, I don't know, pen. It's just the necessity of the ideas is important. And I think while someone have time, it's very important to dedicate enough time to this type of projects, because they are sometimes more important than casual business which architect is doing, even though it's not so obvious from the very beginning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we continue then. We have been talking with 51N4E for a while now. They are even one of the candidates for workshop leaders, and we have been in touch with them. But this year, Aimona is actually here to represent them. What we really wanted to talk about is really the project of Skenderbeg Square. For maybe some of us from Montenegro that had a chance to go to Tirana, and for some of us in team that also saw the project, we had a lot of discussions about it. It's also the project that won the European Urban Public Space Award, which was very important, and it also shows this kind of initiative that one city or one country has towards this revitalization of public space, but more than that, towards this very systematic planning and execution in architecture and cities. So, Aimona, welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Aimona Hoxha, and I'm here to represent 51N4E. Can we start? In fact, 51N4E is a pretty young office. 51N4E is a Brussels-based office. It's pretty young now. It was founded in 2000, so it's been working for around 2 decades now. And the meaning of the office, if many people might question, comes exactly from the coordinates of Brussels, from the geographical location where they're located, 51 north, 4 east. And 51N4E, in fact, has a different approach to architecture from what conventional architecture in general tends to mean. It is very much interested in transforming urban and social together. So it doesn't see them going separately, but it sees them going parallel to each other. In fact, the office is very active in the Euro-Delta region, which is the area where we are mainly operating. but it's also recently very active in France, in Switzerland. We have been also working very closely with strategic projects and urban projects in Istanbul and Turkey. And for the last 13 years, we are more and more present in Albania with several projects now completed. I will start, of course, I will present today Skanderbeg Square, which is a very important project for Albania, not only for the city of Tirana, but also for the major role it has in the history of the country and the relation it has to the nation and the identity of the country. In fact, what we can see here is one image from Skanderbeg Square, and it immediately poses the first gesture that was done with this square, opening up a void, creating a vast open space in the middle of the city, which in fact, even though it has this size or this scale that feels almost monumental, it still allows for a very everyday, almost casual kind of atmosphere. And if I go to the next slide, we have here the second gesture, the second main gesture that defines this project, which is surrounding this very vast open space with a green vegetation. It's a very dense green belt that surrounds all the square, and in fact it works in many ways. This belt works in the first place as a filter. It filters the passengers as they go by, and they also it serves as a kind of an antechambre before you enter the square. It almost feels as an absorption of various activities and social functions happening and being hosted around this green belt. And it also brings you a kind of, let's say, barrier or buffer or a sequential and gradual approach to the square. So you don't step directly towards this vast open space, but you take some time to prepare for it. And this happens exactly in this very space. In fact, if we talk about the void, the concept of the open space, it doesn't come from nowhere. Somehow we did find this void in the city. We are talking about this very square. So this is the center of Tirana. And somehow this void was already there from the remnants of this old Italian master plan. We can right away identify the fact that this different void here has a different order from all the surrounding areas, which are largely loosely planned or almost chaotic urban dense pattern. And this very position in the middle of the city poses a very important question. What does this mean for a city like Tirana? In fact, the city of Tirana, since the collapse of communist times, so since the 1990s, it has been feverishly growing urban-wise at a very aggressive scale, almost in a chaotic and uncontrolled scale that has come to this very point. And somehow, in such a condition, what is important is that when you have a space like this, or when you have a void, it's important to rely on a core that almost lends to Tirana a kind of a gravitational center that allows to spin off the energy just around it. And talking about Skanderbeg Square with his high impact, or it's very adorned with symbolism and a role in history, we can easily differentiate between the two images that in fact show the two latest sequences of historical development of the square. In fact, this square was designed in 1920s from Italian regime. It was later on adjusted by communist system, which was only using it for political manifestations. And so it had become somehow a political core to propagate ideologies, to the latest condition it had when we have founded, in fact, the Skanderbeg Square. It was almost a transportation hub. And it looks almost like an accidental leftover area not planned from the over-planning of the surrounding condition. But what we see today is a very different set. And we can say that in two moments or in two dimensions, this has changed, metaphorically and literally. So what we have done here is we have shifted the position of the transportation hub or an unplanned square to a second priority. And today there is no cars moving around the center. The center is given back to citizens, and it has also created a very new definition of public space, in the sense that it has gotten a completely new life. It has been reinvented and reconstructed in the last year, in the last 2 years, in fact. Okay. Talking about the gestures that I mentioned, the first one was the square, the other one was the green belt surrounding it. We have done a small trick to this project. The square is, in fact, inclined. So we have, in fact, a square that looks almost like a pyramid. Not a pyramid in the geometrical sense, but it is slightly inclined towards its center. And there were many reasons why we took this decision. When you feel this photo, you can almost feel that this inclination is enough for the water to drain. But in fact, if we think of the concept behind it and the intention why this was done, is to somehow counterpart the symbolism that the square used to have once upon a time. So by bringing the pedestrian almost at the same level with a pedestal that is the entrance of these buildings that are surrounding the square that once looked very prominent, very unreachable and very distant from the human scale, we are somehow here challenging the definition of a superiority of the individual towards the monuments. And this empty space, of course, would not have made any sense without this green, dense belt around it. It is important, in fact, to understand that even though this green belt encloses somehow all the square, it also opens it up at the same time. For the very reason because this is the layer that is found between the very urban dense pattern of the city and the very open space in the center. So somehow this has to do a mediation. It has a mediation role. And in this mediation, what it does is that it tends to suffer or to keep away this congestion, this urban congestion that happens in the city. And it is maybe in architecture very unconventional to choose to leave it empty instead of filling it with urban conservative mess. Albania is a Balkan country, therefore it has a wide variety of species, of local and endemic species. But also what we have tried to do here is to do a very multiple layered and multi-characterial urban forest around the square. This goes in many dimensions. The first dimension is that we try to reach somehow this, to increase the tension of the public space through the greenery. And it also is an attempt to create a different kind of urban environment through nature. Besides this, each of garden has its own character. They are planted with different species, local and endemic ones. In some cases, like the garden behind the museum, for instance, they are also combined with exotic trees, but well-adapted ones. But what it is important about this is that this greenery really stands in between the monuments that were placed around the square. And in fact, by enclosing somehow this circle, it also defines the void in between. Okay, this is a video. It's a moment, an instance of the greenery. It's almost, as soon as we finished, in fact, part of the garden. This is when, at the time of the construction site, when not all the gardens were completed. This was the first garden, one of the first gardens that was completed. We can hear the mosque in the background, which almost gives it a kind of a countryside feeling. We can see people are passing by, and even they find some difficulties to pass in between the bushes. But also you can, right away, we could feel the ecosystem that start to create in this urban forest that is that happens to be in the middle of the city, which is very not common to have such a dense park in the central of the city. What we wanted to do is not enclose this void with just a regular park. This is an intention that we wanted to layer the typologies of trees very differently from a flat model of just grass and trees, how it conventionally happens. And so we tried to combine in many different layers the perennials, low shrubs, high shrubs, and the trees. And we can even see that these high shrubs, we can even see it now, just after 1 year after completion of this project, how they have grown even higher than the human scale, which gives a very different perspective of the human dimension in the urban forest, which is quite contrasting with the human scale meaning that has in the void, in the very open space, where we saw already that the human figure almost counterparts the dimension of the monuments around it. This is a wide variety of species that we have been using, we have been planting around the gardens. In fact, there are 12 gardens around the square, and they all have different colors, different scents, different seasonal interest, different beauties, and therefore in different for every season we have a different look of each garden, and not one looks the same as the other due to the combination of the species with each other. And this is a very different perspective of looking at this landscape, particularly in an urban set. This is also a video. And you can see a butterfly here and birds. So it was indeed very important for us to, It was indeed very important for us to really understand the impact of this urban forest in the city in terms of ecosystem. And this ecosystem would go not only in terms of the relation between species with each other and the relation between the layers and the hierarchy of the vegetation that we are planting, but also the relation between this and the city. And even though we were limited to think in terms of perimeter for this project, which is in fact in this map placed over here, we could not limit ourselves thinking of a project, I mean, of this value that could be extended on a city scale. What we see here, in fact, is a map of the hydrology, a map of water lanes in the system. And we can see here many lakes, which are in fact water reservoirs, all built during the communist times, during 60s and 70s. Which in fact were used mainly for agricultural purposes, for irrigation, or for water fishing and for some recreational purposes at times. Already, Tirana as a city is placed around here. So already somehow the city is defined by two lakes, Pascuciani Lake and the Grand Lake Park in the south. What could in fact do this project? I mean, while we're thinking beyond the perimeter of our project, because we also have to think what happens in the future and what can this foster beyond a public space or a central park plaza scale. What indeed it can work is that if we obtain the systematic value of this project that is surrounded by this green vegetation, we could indeed connect these two and really start fostering a green corridor in the city, which could in fact include not only values like elements like water, people, movement of people, shaded passages, vegetation, and so on, but could indeed create a kind of corridor that connects and also feeds the rest of the city while it develops. And going back to these very elements, to the commons, Albania is a country that has been suffering for half a century a kind of a repression, dictatorship that really secluded it. And therefore, everything during this time was centralized, giving the fact also that everything was supposed to be thought on a collective scale. So the individualism somehow was not existing as a concept. Just 28 years later, we find ourselves in a condition where collective thought doesn't make any sense anymore, and we are almost the exact opposite of what was before. And maybe this is what I mentioned in the beginning, that 51 and Fourier space producers try to bring into a parallel line social transformation and urban transformation. I think this is the moment where it happens. It doesn't only bring an urban transformation, but it is using the social input to create urban transformation and to make it happen at a parallel scale. So what, in counterpart to what I just mentioned, what was there in the society 50 years, 28 years before, for half a century, this individualism in this space, we don't see that anymore. In this space, we are providing kind of a sense of togetherness that doesn't only rely in people, not only in the freedom of use and in this vast space that can be used by people however they want, but it goes beyond. There are water elements, the stone elements that we will even see later in detail, and the green part, the local species. So somehow by bringing these local resources and using them at a common ground in a public space, you also enhance a kind of togetherness also for the people. And this surprisingly has really worked well, even seen from a local perspective. So before, only a few time before, nobody could sit on the stairs that you can see just above up. Because these stairs were before the stairs of these monuments, and they were designed differently, and they were supposed to be almost very intimidating, almost prominent, and not able to be used as sitting benches for some elderly lady that are now enjoying the leaking fountains that are making wet their feet somehow. And this is just a regular evening for the ladies of my neighborhood as well. The water element, in fact, in this project is being used in many dimensions. So, in fact, all the plaza, all the roof, let's say, is a kind of a wet roof. It has the potential to be a wet roof because all this diagram that you can see here in colors is, in fact, fountain groups. And these fountain groups are supposed to operate according to programs. This is also integrated, I mean, it's coordinated with the events that might be happening on the square. Whenever we have an event, you have a complete dry plaza. But whenever you don't have an event going on and it's a summer day and you need some microclimate to be created because there is, it's really hot, you have the possibility to open all the squares, all the fountains. And in fact, we have around 100 leaking fountains, combined also with 2 groups of jet fountains on these 2 corners. And this gives the opportunity to the square to be refreshed and also refresh the people that are passing by there. But also, it has a kind of a double role, because on one side, it can leave some space to the pedestrian to walk on a wet surface. And on the other side, it has the potential to reveal the mosaic of stones that it hides underneath. While in this image, in fact, we can see another dimension of stripping off the monumentality of the buildings around it. During the night, the square is almost not lit. And what happens is that when the leaking fountains are open, this becomes completely a lake surface, almost at the scale that it mirrors, it reflects all the monuments around it upside down. And in fact, it's almost a surreal experience to be here by night, especially when it rains, because not even a drop of the surface remains dry. And it gives maybe a different dimension of how people relate to these monuments around it. So we have a plaza, which is at this scale, almost monumental scale. And then we have an edge around it, an edge that is a composition of many things. It's a complex thing, in fact. So we meet the square with paved surfaces, washed concrete. We meet the square with this gutter. In fact, we have a gutter all around the square. If you can see, I mean, all this perimeter around the square is a gutter that gathers all the water that comes down from the fountains, is gathered in the technical room that is here, and then it's returned to the surface to make the surface wet again. The fact that the plaza meets this green belt in this way is very intentional. Of course, this green belt is already something that hosts many activities, many social functions. It's also something that integrates and relates to the programs of these very buildings that are happening over here. We have here the mosque that we just heard the voice of, sound of before. We have here the National Opera. We have here the National Historic Museum. Here we have a hotel. And here we have the National Bank. These are the main monuments somehow that were inspired, in fact, the definition of this plaza, which was then followed by this mediator and green buffer around it. But at some points, also this green spills over the square. So it steps somehow. So we don't have such a clear cut in some points, but we allow somehow this vegetation to enter in and to become part of the shading and to become part of the public space. In fact, we have almost 12 gardens around it. Every time they are combined with programs that are being hosted in the agent buildings. And one of the most important things of public space is, in fact, freedom of use. We are not talking only about adjusting the space, but also about clearly leaving it open to the users to use the space as they want. And this is not an easy process, in fact. We have started, since 10 years ago, we started to talk with people, but especially before starting the construction. Since the beginning of the process, we have involved every stakeholder to participate in a dialogue. And what does this dialogue consist in? Basically, we had to talk with every institution around in order to collaborate or co-design with us the program that we are offering, providing in the garden next to it. And these gardens always, I mean, that's why in such a wide green belt, we have so many different gardens. And it never becomes monotonous, because it's very well adjusted, or it's very diverse, in a diversing way, adjusted to the programs next to it. So the square is at times, this is the columns of the opera building effects. They become a playground at sometimes. They become a family playground at times. We have this pavilion, which is in one of the in the ceremony garden designed inside the square. And this pavilion we used to call in the beginning a wind turbine, because of the way how it is constructed and the way how the wind falls in this pavilion. But then people find their own way to appropriate it. Now we have wedding ceremonies going on here, and because of this column, this is the only concrete structure that we have, the structural beam that we have on this pavilion, they have started to name this altar. And in fact, they do host in the weekends weddings here. But in the overall, what this provides is the possibility to use the square as people want. And on top of it, the reason why we have created such an intense dialogue with each of these institutions and each of the buildings that are around the square, it's important to engage and to create a space for participatory design, especially when dealing with public space. And even though we are used to a very top-down approach in architecture, especially when dealing with this kind of sensitive projects that hold above symbolism role in the country, and they are very related to identity and a bit beyond an architectural project responsibility, it is important to also allow them to participate and also guarantee the fact that people will appropriate the space and it will not be a blockage, because this what happens sometimes, especially in public space, that the architect takes over, he will do it, he will design it as he wants. The public is never implemented or integrated. And well, you can find various kinds of moments and uses around the square. Okay, this is what I was just talking about. Ceremony happening in just one of the pavilions that we had in fact left open, and we had only installed some poles here. This was still almost under construction, and people started to do weddings already here. What is interesting about this moment is that not always the square is a protagonist. Sometimes the square is just a background. At this moment that we're speaking, the square is just behind, it's just a backdrop. And the moment of action doesn't happen on the square, but happens just at its periphery, at its green belt. And at this very moment, the square becomes a second priority in this scheme. Well, talking about local resources and identity, we come to the condition of Albania also to pave the square. In itself, the square is now a kind of a carpet of stones from all over the country. And this doesn't happen only because we decided so. It was not completely intentional. But also dealing with a Balkanic country where you don't have the infrastructure and not always the guarantee that a quarry will provide you with the same type of stone in terms of quality and quantity to fulfill an area of 24,000 square meters, which is the scale of this plaza. We had to somehow adjust the design, but also kind of break down the modules that we were preparing to have a module of 40 to 45 centimeters. That's a tile we have used all over the square. And we have, in fact, also this kind of gradation. We have 4 different colors or nuances that are then embraced in one. So they are spreading while they are coming to this centrality that is slightly elevated up to 3% towards the center. This all becomes one, and you cannot recognize the colors anymore. But as it goes to the edges, you can feel more and more clearly the nuances of the natural stone. And what was interesting about this is that as people walk along the square, they can find the stone that is from their area or from their origin, which somehow makes them relate to the square in a different way. And well, this unavoidably relates a bit to the national identity, but also it's a nice way how people feel more and more related to the square through this. This is a map of Albania, through this very connection of where the one stone comes from and their origin as well aligns. And not only we have done a plaza with a carpet of natural stones, but this plaza has 24,000 square meters, as I mentioned, and therefore, what does that mean? It means capacity. Capacity for all kinds of events. The same thing that I also noticed in the hangar that the workshop was held. When you have a space that has not on purposely designed kind of columns, and you have a flexibility of use, this is what capacity means. And not only at the roof level, but also out of need, in fact, because around the Skanderbeg Square, in fact, there is a ring road that they just omitted, the municipality just omitted the parking lots over there. There was a real need for parking. So what we did is we decided to use this very roof that is inclined already, to use the height and to use this inclination of this very roof to create a parking underneath by going slightly 2 to 3% also inclined underneath. By creating a two-story parking that was an utilitarian need of the plaza. But in the meantime, what happens in the above ground is interesting because the square at this scale, it can host any kind of event. And in fact, this is a day of prayer when you feel that each of these institutions really do use the square, whether it's only the part that is surrounding it or the entire thing. And somehow the square has multiple owners in different days. And this is another moment in a concert. When concerts happen in the square, it's just impossible to walk. Even though it seems so big, it's never enough for people to be filled. This is an image of a video of the textures, different patterns, different colors, different shades of 34 types, in fact, of natural stones that we have been using in the square. And this is what happens in the underground part by night. So in fact, sometimes, even though we have designed the parking to be a parking at the first place because it was basically a need, this has resulted in a very funny, also we're very happy to see that, in fact, that we designed it in such a way to be flexible for all kinds of events. And in fact, there is also Sunday fairs now being organized there, or markets. And by night, it can completely turn in an underground rave party or a club. These are, by the way, two colleagues of the office over here. This is the above ground. It's a moment of celebration. So, in fact, the very initial idea of the plaza and of this void, okay, it's really too dramatic now. Okay. So the very initial idea of the plaza, in fact, was when we saw that void on the urban context, was really to escape from the city somehow, even though it's a bit paradoxical because you are going to the center of the city to escape from it. This intention also continues here. And because the plaza is completely not lit during the night, and you can only see the buildings around it that are lighting it, during the night, it truly becomes a moment of escape. When you are here, you can choose to feel solitary, you feel like you are not in the city anymore, you feel like you disconnect from everything, or you can just join the event and you feel you are still part of this very dense vibe. This is also another moment of by night, where some guys, can I play this again? Okay. Is taking a movable chair that we have there, and he's appropriating and customizing it. In fact, what we have done is design a very basic furniture that might add, and we have, since we didn't want to add any symbolism to this project from what it already has from the history, we decided to somehow engrave this in a very basic movable furniture. And this movable furniture we have called, in fact, Love Bench. It's a very, very basic furniture. It's larger than one, but smaller than double. So it's very comfortable for one person to sit, but it's really tight. Or not tight, but they really have to be intimate with each other in order to sit with each other in the same bench. And that's what we can see here, in fact. This furniture that we have designed, in fact, it's a very not sophisticated element, a very low-cost product that we have done on custom only for this project. And what is interesting to feel in this moment of intimacy is that even though the square seems to have a kind of monumental size, it still can create moments of intimacy. And this is not only through this movable chair, but it's also through all the moments that we have seen so far, including the very different ambiances that gardens can create together with the programs that buildings are fostering to this square. These are, in fact, two publications of 5104E. This is a collaboration that we have had with Falma Afshazi and Stefano Graziani, which is also an architectural photographer. This book relates more to a novel narration of projects of 51 in Tirana and abroad, while on the other hand we see the very detailed and stepped transformation of Skanderbeg Square in chapters. In fact, this series of books is called Chapters. It was also published in Chicago Biennale a couple of months ago, and it is a nice pilot series that is also going to be for other projects, always related with a certain theme. And in this case, the theme is the transformation of this grandiose public space. So, in fact, 51FORE arrived in Tirana 13 years ago, and now they are almost residents there. And what this is an expression, a quote from Edi Rama, which is the mayor of, sorry, is the prime minister, but used to be the mayor, in fact, of the country today. And well, I am, in fact, a local. I mean, I'm Albanian. I'm not Belgian. But what I see from my perspective of how Belgian architects operate in Albania with all the projects that they've been doing so far, I truly believe that it is necessary to have a Belgian sharpness to be able to use local resources so we can result in successful projects. And in fact, they have not decided just to come to Tirana, do some projects and leave. But indeed, they have decided to also spin off and extend their international expertise combined with the local experts in a kind of a local office that is called IRI. And this is maybe, I don't know for other countries, but at least for Tirana is quite unique because foreign architects don't tend to have this this impact. Well, I will close the presentation with a sequence of photos from the square. I hope you can feel somehow as a little bit as you can part of it.
I just wanna. While we look at the photos, I just want to notice one thing, and I've been there, so I've noticed it there as well. Is that, I mean, this very, very public space is somehow very personal space for each user. Like, people really use it as a personal space. Like, I mean, you beautifully showed that in the photos as well, but I think it's really felt there in the place as well, that people really feel like in their own garden all the time, which is great part of. I mean, I assume that this is why it's such a popular project.
In fact, indeed it's true. Even though it has almost a monumental size, yet it doesn't prevent this kind of everydayness and intimacy that people really feel comfortable, and they truly can feel at home, and they use it as they want. Which is, for example, I mean, this is really what the architectural photographer mentioned in the beginning. No words needed. And that's how comfortable people feel. And this happens everywhere. This happens also in the steps of the museum, the stairs of the museum. That's a moment where you can find all the elderly ladies in a row, always.
This is, I mean, the square, as you mentioned, and as many of you know, used to be this great historic, I mean, not really historic, but this great monumental space, really manifestation of the politics in Albania. And what I also think now, it's also a manifestation of politics in Albania, maybe different now, but this is really my impression. Also during Chicago Biennale there was a presentation of the project where the mayor was present as well. And this doesn't happen in architecture a lot. So I really think this speaks in a way for that.
Well, I think the reason why the mayor was there was obviously for because they were developers. The municipality is a client of this project. But I also think that politically speaking, always, of course, it's inevitable to connect politics with architecture, especially at in public projects. But as I mentioned before, it's important to understand what kind of society we used to have before and what kind of values we used to inherit. And somehow in these 28 years we have missed, or we have forgotten about it. So maybe some values should remain. And if there is a way to do this with public space or with architecture, let's do it. If this is the way how to bring people together and to make them think differently about their extreme individualism and feel and relate differently also to public space and to each other, maybe this is the way.
Thank you very much. We continue with Marko Dabrović from 3LHD. 3LHD have been here before, I mean not here, in Kotor, and also in Podgorica, very long time ago. And, but now Marko talks a bit different about, are you going to speak in English? Yeah? Okay. Here you go. Marko is going to have a slightly different presentation of what 3LHD is, and I think you're going to like it very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana, and thank you everybody for inviting me in front of 3LHD to Tivat. I'm going to give you a presentation of 24 years of 3LHD. It's not going to be only architecture, but the way the company developed. So I'm coming from neighboring country, Croatia, which is in just city next to the border. It's called Dubrovnik. So we are a very young country. We can call it startup country. It's just started in 1991. But we have a long building tradition. This city, Korčula, had a statute from 1214, and city of Dubrovnik made its statute in 1272, which regulates basically all building and all relations within the city. So this is the writing when you enter the Dubrovnik City Hall. It says, forget private and care about public. This is something we lack so much in today's society. Croatia, or the borders were not fixed as you imagine in your project of between the borders, because this could not work here. We had this type of borders, but then we had this type of borders, and now we are this type of border, and who knows what's going to be next. Anyway, 1991, I was studying in Zagreb architecture. The war began. Also, my city of Dubrovnik was ruined, and I started a company with Tanja, Silvije, Sasha, and this is me. We called company 3LHD because we were not sure if this company will be successful. So we couldn't use our family names. And suddenly Tanja, Silvije, and Sasha, they were left-handers. And I did not use my hand to draw because I use computer. So this means 3 left-handers and hard drive. First project we won on public competition was this hotel in Zagreb. But this hotel was never built. Instead, they built this building of one of our colleagues, but it gave us some first lesson in architecture. Nothing is stable. You cannot survive with the projects even that you have contracted them. So we started to do small projects like interior design. My colleagues did a lot of interiors, even furniture for carpenters, and I did some 3D renderings, which was really new at that time. And the first commission for the family house was this Villa Clara in 1997, and it won a national award for family houses, and that brought company in public focus. Since then, we built many houses. This one is in Dubrovnik for one football player from Australia. In these houses, we learn how to do things precisely and how to engage many materials and how to control the process. And we were using, in these houses, we were using different materials, we were exploring different shapes. So this house is built for a family in Zagreb with wooden cladding. Then latest house we're just finishing in Rovinj has completely made of white concrete and large stone blocks and very interesting 9-meter glazing. So as you can see, during this time we always try to envision everything digitally or in design, and our houses or our projects usually look more or less like our renderings. So this is white concrete directly from the formwork, and this is teak. First project that was publicly visible outside of Croatia was Memorial Bridge. We won competition in 1997. It took City of Rijeka 3 years to contract the building, and in 2001 we could design this bridge. It was very special object because it was monument. We wanted to achieve the span, the walking surface, and the vertical as a single element. To achieve this, we wanted very thin slab of only 55 centimeters, spanning 47 meters. Then we have these verticals, but to build it, we needed very large infrastructural elements. These are pilots, and to hold this very tiny surface stable. And we designed almost everything like it's in the car industry. Every detail on this bridge was prefabricated and brought to the place. So these, bridge was built in a shipyard locally, and then transported with this barge. Remember this barge, I'll show it a little bit later. So the bridge was placed on the barge and then pulled by a boat to a little bit louder. Yeah. Okay, this one works. So the bridge, this barge had to be sunken so the bridge could pass on the existing bridges. And later, when the water was pumped out of the barge, you can easily go upwards, and then it was rotated, and the very thin structure was placed on a location. This bridge also was featuring first LED lights that you can see here. It was made by Osram, and these aluminium was ordered from Sweden, so it was very international. The glass came from Italy, 19mm thick glass, but everything was designed as almost like an object in interior, not like infrastructure. So you can see very high precision of all details, and it's really important for the local community. In Istria in 2005, we were given order from a local community to build a small communal sport hall, and we had a very low budget and not enough time to build it in a classical way. So we thought, how can we, in this beautiful village on this here location, how can we build something quickly? There was an existing school, and this courtyard was place for this sport hall. So we were thinking about huts that were used by local shepherds to keep keep safe during the night or during the storms. So they use drywall without any cement and drywall layout on the roof. So we went to a quarry, handpicked some stones, and we used the very cheap prefabrication technology that was used to make industrial buildings on the periphery. But we placed on the vibration tables for making concrete. We placed these stones, then we put them in a layer of sand. So when the panels were raised and washed, you just had a drywall structure. So these panels were brought to the site and placed, and we built this sport hall in just 11 months. The sport, for us, it was very important that it showed to publicity what's going on inside, so everybody walking here can peek through the windows and see what is the activity, because this is the north side, and so there's no harm from the sunlight. And we have this very nice natural bilateral condition in the sport hall. The sport hall is used for different programs, and the funny thing about the sport hall that it won best sport building of the world in Barcelona World Festival, but it was in the same category with Beijing Water Cube and Wimbledon, the London new stadium from Norman Foster. So it was very humble building with just 1,000 square meters. And as you can see, we try always in our buildings to hide everything that is necessary, like air conditioning. So basically you can always walk around our building without seeing infrastructure. In 2004, office started to grow, and we needed to control this strange condition. So we developed a software which was partially developed in several different layers. With this software, we can control amount of hours that were delivered from the office, because we were completely untaught during the none of our teachers knew anything about economy, and we could not use any knowledge that were probably available in other companies, because all four of us just started from the university and having none idea of how to run the company. So this software grew in a way that we can control all the expenses and all the hours that were used in our office. So we can, at some moments, really quit or stop or decrease the company. And you have all these expenses, as you can see them on our place. 2005, we have won national competition for pavilion in Expo in Nagoya, together with photographer and multimedia artist Damir Fabjanic and Dalibor Martinis. So this was our first realization outside of Croatia. It was, as I said, in Japan. It attracted a lot of attention internationally, and it was not only architecture, because pavilion was temporary, but it was media building, where we explored a large integration between architecture and media. And at the end, the pavilion was completely destroyed, because the plan of the Expo 2005 was to turn this land into a park. So 2003, we were given a commission from the city to redesign the old cinema in Zagreb, because old cinemas in Zagreb were disappearing, because the new strategy imported from the United States of large shopping malls with cinemas was was brought to Zagreb. So we turned this old cinema to then center. This was existing building with the roof terrace and the stairs to the roof. And you see here you have windows of this building. So we had to design the building which can bring people from the public street to this courtyard and then to this public roof. In the interior of old cinema, you see the cutting of the old chairs, and this was designed with idea we were learning during construction of the bridge. So this is design how they design ships. First you make structural steel, and then you cover it with sheets of steel, which doesn't need any hydroization, and this thermal insulation is placed below. So we got this interesting shape, which allow everybody to get to the roof through the building, and this door is open, and we designed whole this courtyard with these letters Zagrebački plesni centar, ZPC. Inside we made these ballet practice areas, wardrobes, staircases, and project is still in use. So next large project was Zamet Center in Rijeka. It was on a steep terrain. The program was to build sport hall, public square, garage, and some public facilities like communal center, library, and some small cafes and shopping facilities. On the upper road there was a public school, so we wanted to achieve public space on the roof, so you can almost walk on all these stairs and access this school. And also, since the sport hall has a circulation on the upper level, so you can access it through all these areas. To cover this building with single material, we were researching, so this is traditional drywalls in Rijeka, and this was one JavaScript software where you could make some different patterns from square to hexagon, but we wanted something hybrid because we didn't want tiling to be visible on this square, on this building, on the square, of course. So we made these 4 colors of pentagrams, which connect to these hexagrams. Maybe you can see them here. And they don't show any direction. They are not directional. And we placed the Center Zamet logo on a big square, because at that time Google Earth became very popular. So we were thinking how our buildings will look from on the Google photo. And now you see, even on Google photo, you can see Center Zamet. The building was designed with steel and later covered with profiled glass, everything tiled in this white ceramic, and we left these gaps so the light can penetrate into the building. And here you see entrance to the sport hall, and inside the sport hall is made for practice with the 2 different terrains for handball, and it can integrate in a single court for some sport activities. Riva Split was one of very important project for us, because this is place where Diocletian, the last Roman emperor, made his villa, and later Croatians turned this villa into whole city. We won the competition to design 300 meters of public waterfront, which is place where this whole city has its own public activities. So there you have like church promenades, and then marathons, or even Goran Ivanišević, when he won Wimbledon, then whole split together with the boats and on the trucks, and giving him. The Riva waterfront was really abandoned place in terms of design. You have motorbikes, asphalt, very ugly sunshades, but you had this scale of almost Roman dimension with these beautiful palms. And what we did is we did something that has a very visible zoning next to the buildings. We kept a quiet area. here, next to the promenade, we placed these sunshades that give very nice view to the people who are walking up and down, which is traditional in Croatia, to walk along the coastline. And then in park, we made another quiet zone with benches and Mediterranean herbs, where you could sense the real Mediterranean with the smell. We used always in our projects our colleague designers, so these lamp poles were designed by Numens. Also they designed the benches and these canopies. So these are the canopies that can detect and rotate to enlarge the walking surface for some larger events. And this is the park with these custom designed benches, combination of concrete and wood. But Split had an issue with the public. We learned how it's difficult to build in a public space in Croatia because everybody had its own opinion. Since we became democracy, everybody had a feeling that he can comment public space. So you had these very funny articles and even protests. People were protesting against concrete on a public space because they believe that stone is the only real material you can use. Then we had our TV person who is throwing the fence of construction site in the sea, and then you have article like this where you say hot passion because of cold concrete of new design Riva, and then you have Riva wins. Riva is presented in New York as one of the best public project, and then you have UNESCO is coming in Split, and construction is going to be stopped. So then UNESCO is not coming to Split, and UNESCO gives a green light for Riva. So concrete on Riva has made everybody happy, or I don't know how to translate it. And Split will be new Nice. So this is like a progress of. So this is what I call the extradidation or populist approach to architecture, where everybody feels we are treated like some young people performing in front of the wider public, and then they use mobile phones and switching, they like us or not. But I think that's where the architects are guilty, because they were not controlling the whole process. They were hiding just into design. And that's something that the populist approach would never happen in an operation, like the patients by telephone giving instruction to somebody on operation which knee or kidney will be operated, or when the plane is landing, nobody chooses who will land the plane from the public, from the inside the plane. It's the point that we are still envisioned like this, that we are just designing beautiful things and not organizing and being responsive. I don't know conditions in Montenegro, but before every project I have to give my own credibility. I have to go to the bank and give the loan to guarantee for the success of the project. So I'm not see myself as this guy at all. So to control this process is better, because the projects were getting larger and larger, and the way how the construction companies in Croatia worked was not suitable for us. So we designed another software for us, that we can control every material and object we build in our houses. So here you see this 3RHD specification software, where you can, every chair, every carpet, even this diffuser for air conditioning, for disabled people, wash basin, or the pump for door closer, you can specify everything. So the equipment that is built in is the one that you designed, and the buildings are not changed during the process, because in this process of changing the buildings, the only cost goes to the architect, because you have to change your design many times to build it as you wanted. So this software is already used for almost 10 years. And this is outcome of the software. So these specifications of all the materials are very easily printed. And so result is like this book, which even a client can go through them and see all the materials the house or the project will be built. And this software was heavily used in Hotel One, one of our like second hotel we designed. First one, you remember, didn't happen. And this is fresh photo from drone a few days ago in Rovinj. And this is hotel from the 70s, beautiful Hotel Eden. And we designed this hotel as some homage or dialogue how to form public space between these hotels and not to in some nice dance or negotiation. This was rendering from 2006, and this is how the hotel looks when it was built. So for this hotel, we somehow tried to recreate the design process that was happening in Yugoslavia during the 70s, because in Yugoslavia there was like embargo. You could not buy chairs from Italy, and artists from Denmark or whatever. They had to reinvent everything. So we tried to bring our generation of designers, artists in this hotel. So this hotel furniture was designed specially for the hotel. Later you can buy in Italy from Moroso. These lamps were designed specially for the hotel. This art was designed by our friend Ivana Franke, and there's a lot of graphical design in hotel and specially designed for it. So the hotel features very nice interior. This is Silvia Vujicic art hanging in every room, also used as a light. Then Numen designed chairs for lights, another light. And the hotel was built only in 10 months because we concept made it with the prefabricated bathrooms that were brought inside during the construction. And some rooms have their own private pools in front of the terrace, like this. 2007, 2008, we started one project, Palladium Arena in Split. Croatia was having in 2009 championship for handball in Split, and we designed this arena. But arena was not the only part of the whole project. Project was much larger. We had to build arena plus shopping center, garage, and tower. We successfully finished sport arena on time, and in only 420 days we made design and construction. We had a small office on site and this building here, so we could control construction. But this was the championship. This was the championship opening. 11,000 spectators in arena. We used the same principle for designing this arena as we did in Bale. So if you are walking on a local street, you could see what is happening within arena. It's not something that is beyond some wall or 2 stories above. It has a retractable stand, so you can serve as a multi-purpose arena, and it's very inclined. Stands give you real narrow presence, and the players really feel the presence of spectators. So this is made with transparent glass, and this was the opening ceremony, and this is result. So this arena was never finished. Our bills were not paid because the company that was building it and operating it was bankrupted, and we almost had a bankrupt. But in 2005, I forgot to mention before, we decided as 4 partners that nobody of us want to be manager in architectural company, that we want to be creative leaders in the company and design, and not to run financial part of the company. So our manager, who was using the software, told us, look, the crisis is coming, we have to close the split office and reduce the number of people, cut all the costs because it's going to be a tough ride. And he was right. We didn't believe him at the first 3 months, but later this move proved the success for our company, that we are still here. So this was the, you see, number of people in our company. We grew to this moment to peak, and then bam, collapse. So as I said, these softwares plus manager helped us to recognize what is going on. And by this I want to say, yes, the architecture is full of these. You see, we are here, but you never know if we are going to go down or up, wherever it goes, because working with larger projects give you larger issues or larger sensitivity. So we won in Rijeka, we won a competition for a public bus terminal with 900 parking places. The idea was from the city to clean this public area which is full of cars and give it back to the people to use it as a public waterfront instead of parking. So the car should move here. And this steel structure building was hollow to let the air wash the garage and bus terminal. We created a public space in front of it, and you entered in the building below, and buses circulate on this upper level and cars are parked on the top level. So 2010, Vedran was present in Venice. We designed, you remember that this was barge used to transport the ship, the bridge to its place. So together with our colleagues, architects from Croatia, we were invited to participate in Venice Biennale. And since Croatia doesn't have its pavilion in Venice, after the split, Serbia took the pavilion. Sorry? Yeah, and so we decided to use the virtual territory to bring the pavilion to Venice. And we designed we had a very low budget. I think budget was only suitable for exhibition in Venice, but we somehow used this very cheap steel, reinforcement steel. And from it we made this interesting pavilion with internal void. And it was built in a shipyard, layer by layer, and it acts as, if you look at it from far away, it looks very hollow. When you're inside it, it was like a brick made of steel. This was inside. It gave also very nice shading and ventilation space. And you see, here it says perfection has its price. Why? Because it came to Venice completely broken. So we decided not to expose it, because it was not intention to show object which looks like Zaha Hadid design, but we wanted to present object which was presented in Croatia, in Rijeka, where you can enter. So this was like a big failure with this transport company completely ruining our exhibition. So it was never presented to publicity, but on the internet it had a really nice virtual life, and from this moment I think you can recognize even some pavilions in Serpentine Gallery have inspiration. Our office was invited to participate in Toronto, in Canada, on some sport facility competition. This was public investment in 4 arenas in former industrial area of Toronto. So we stacked 4 ice rinks, one on top of the other, building ice scraper, and it was we had two options. One was ice scraper, and this one where we had four ice rinks around, like four iPhones placed one next to the other. And this was the other way of working with the public money. In Canada, they don't do competitions as we in Croatia do. They do it in a dialogue with the pricing, with the local community, proposing two solutions and then choosing the right one. This project also never came to construction because Mayor of Toronto, maybe you remember him, Rob Ford, didn't like any public money being spent in infrastructure. 2013 we were invited on a competition in Switzerland to work for one very interesting hotel. We won this competition in really tough competition from Brazilian, Italian, Spanish, English, American interior designers. Before we never did any interior design, only for our own projects. But since this was Switzerland and high valued client, we went there and we won the competition. We designed the interior of this hotel, but there was another issue with this location. The client had some financial problems with the Swiss border customs, because for his former hotel that was designed by Norman Foster, he imported art that was valued 500 million Swiss francs, and he didn't pay the taxes. So the building of this project is not cancelled but on hold. In China we were at 2014 we were 13, sometimes before Christmas, we were invited to come to China and to build project because they saw a hotel in Rovinj, Hotel Lone, and they said we would like you to come and offer the design services. We came to Guangzhou somewhere 15 days after the New Year Day, and we also brought design. The location is, like I would say, center of the southern China, because you have Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Dongguan, Guangzhou, Foshan, Zhongshan, Zhuhai, and here's Macau. These are the cities that have 60 million inhabitants. This morning you saw some photographs from Shenzhen and Guangzhou of these high towers. So we were giving this, this is Pearl River, and just on a peak of Pearl River Delta, we were commissioned this site. Maybe you can notify this growth of this area, which was in '73 it was completely vacant, empty, and in 2003 it was already built. And this is the concept for making this whole area one single big city. And you know we are here in the center, and they already made this 50 kilometers bridge crossing from Macau to Hong Kong and new airport. So this was the drawing we were given. We made some sketches, some very rough concept design in these 10 days. And this is design that was made in 4 months. We did interior design, landscaping, structural engineering, and all infrastructure of the hotel. Then they didn't call us for at least 2 years. And then since we were looking at the Google Earth and showing people where we are going to build our next project, someday something strange popped up and it looks like our design. So they started to build, they invited us, of course, only site drilling, because this old park was artificially built, and we needed to make the piles which were 46 meters deep to get to the bedrock. So you can see advancing of the hotel, and this is final design. It looks like two lones crush into one into the other. We made these four different courtyards, each having its program. This is entrance courtyard, this is connection with the park, water features with a pool, indoor, outdoor, and relaxed pool with a spa in the back. This is how it looks now. This all you see here, rice fields are going to be gone and become future development. This is hotel, how I seen it on 30th of August when we were there on a grand opening. We used Ivana Franke again for this lobby sculpture again. This is different sculpture than in Rovinj, and she also did interesting sculpture in the back of the reception. We designed for first time Chinese restaurant, the banquet hall with these openings, and now we have under construction a very large hotel in Rovinj, which happens to be here. Around the corner is Hotel One. There was an existing marina and hotel from the 80s with beautiful 5 pines. The client didn't see this hotel potential to redevelop it, but to tear it down and construct new. It has a beautiful view to city of Rovinj. Yes, and we like this pine, and we said we have to keep these pines however it's possible, so we demolished this existing structure. It was eaten by these machines, and these 5 pines were staying there in the air for 1 year after demolition was finished. This was our 3D rendering for new marina and hotel park. Client wanted us to bring some foreign name, and we invited 3 or 4 teams to compete for the interior design, and this is Piero Lissoni design from Milano, Italy. So we are collaborating with him on this project. And to design such a complex project, first time we used this point cloud technology where we digitally scanned whole Rovinj with very precisely laser scanners. So we could have exactly know how the view from each room will look like and how to protect these beautiful pines and other trees around it. So you see what is going. This is construction site, and this is point cloud. So you have exactly locations of everything, and to make one of the because you were given such a nice location, we wanted to make the best venue like this, banquet hall or meeting space. So we designed 15 meters glass by 3.6 meters single pane, and it was made in Germany with this company that does glass for the Apple stores around the world. So they brought this huge piece of glass, made rails to place it on final position. So now you have this huge glass pane. Everything was designed in 3D, first completely BIM project for our office. Here you see design and drone image. And now we are working on one very interesting project in Dubrovnik, where we won competition against big names, Zaha, Foster, and the Richard Meyer, and several other big names. We were given the site of this former hotel that was huge footprint, 36,000 meters, one of the highest, tallest building in Croatia, 18 floors. But the area is protected by UNESCO, which means all the projects need to be given UNESCO approval. So we are now waiting for this approval, and hotel is designed as a green roof, terraced, only 6 stories, much smaller than existing one, with existing greenery and new greenery in between, some villas, and again we use these point clouds where we can feel like we are building on a site. You have engineers present in the office, but all the very complicated site is scanned by helicopter, digital data, so you can know, you can see even what is below the shrubs. So this is hotel being, we also designed the interior of this hotel, and we have a large international team. And now we became, well, since the office was growing, we couldn't fit in our own office anymore. We had to find a new place, so we also have a new partner, Paula. She was our long-term project leader. She became now a junior partner in the office. This was our existing space where we couldn't expand anymore, so we bought a cinema. Now we found ourselves in a very strange position, because now we are designers, clients, everything in one role, and the cinema does not have any window. It was not meant that way. So we designed an opening on the roof, some bar or cantina entrance. We again used point cloud to have this very clear what is where, because this building was full of covers, so you could not design it properly. So we could compare existing condition with design, and this is existing condition, architect design, this is 3D. Now we'll see, next photos you'll see maybe how it looks built. And we spent a lot of energy how to bring the daylight to this project. So this is now space under construction. We ruined everything almost to let the air and sun come to the lower area, because we are going to build a gallery. We are very tough clients. We don't allow 10-meter high voids. Even if we would propose it for the other clients. And this is construction site. We're also trying now to do some spin-off of our design. These are lamps called Root. They came from this surface ceiling design, one restaurant in Maksimir, which is not yet finished, so I'm not showing it yet. And then we also designed Umomoku. This is funny name. Maybe you know Mišo Kovač song Dalmacija u mom oku. So this is Umomoku, is a name for this chair that was designed for one hotel. Now we are trying this winter, it will be sold by Prostoria. And all the software that we designed, we are trying now to put in one single online platform that's called Volume. It has this game of number 3, which is 3 LHD, also meter cubic, which stands for volume. It will be all this that we use in-house. We will offer it to wider public for testing. Neven, when we were Vedran, when we were traveling to Montenegro, he was listening to me how I'm giving instruction to programmers. So I'm crazy, but this is where I fell into. So we are now designing this software that help us to more operationally bring buildings to life the way how we wanted. So thank you.
So I mean, we know you use technology a lot, but the question is that maybe interests people is, do you educate your staff, or how do you do this?
It's we constantly educate our staff. We have in the office, because the office now 45 people, there's a fluctuation of people going in and coming out, and there is a lot of education you have to do, so they are up to date with this, all these demands of BIM, 3D software, and we like to perform on very worldwide market, and the only way is to keep up with technology. So we educate our people.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Marco. We'll continue. We have one more thing to do. We have a panel discussion regarding design and architecture in relation to education. This is something that very much interests us in APSS and beyond that. So we are inviting Slavica Stamatović-Vučković, who is the professor of architecture at the School of Architecture in Podgorica at University of Montenegro, Vedran Mimica, who gave an amazing lecture last night, and Professor Sasha Mahti, who gave lecture this morning, and Artyom here as well, who was helping us lead APSS this year. We'll do the talk in English and maybe with some in Montenegrin, so maybe whoever wants to can use the translation. You're also welcome to ask questions anytime as we are kind of going through discussion. Maybe we start with the ladies. So Slavica, please. I mean, I thought about doing an introduction, but then we talked these days so much and so on that maybe the introduction is not needed, as we all kind of know these issues that interest us, and some of those we mentioned last night as well. This kind of main question behind this idea of having the panel on education in architecture and design is really how do we keep minds open of our students in institutions and outside of institutions. In Kotor APSS, we kind of insist of this non-institutional education, as we really believe that this is maybe an easier way, but it's kind of a more open way to deal with education in such a way. Maybe because we insist on working in these kind of specific conditions where we choose the space as a very important point of where we work. We really think that working in prison really influenced a lot the process, the mechanism, and eventually the methodology that came out from APSS. And this methodology, maybe surprisingly, maybe not, but worked very, very well even in synchro building this year. I was really overwhelmed how, people working in specific places react differently. Of course, also led by mentors in a specific ways, but for me this is always a trigger that gives good results. Also, what we in APSS always deal with very specific issues, with very specific problems linked to the location where we are. It has always been Boca Bay, but it has been Kotor, it has been Tivat as well now, but in general Boca Bay. But what we try to do is not influence the students to give solutions, but rather than that, to provide ideas and to just think and continue to develop the process with us with not a really specific goal at the end. So maybe we can all maybe talk about the processes that we think are maybe important.
I don't know if this works. Okay. Hi everybody. I like very much that idea and solutions, because this is the very important, that idea. It means just the beginning of something, And we are maybe, I was thinking about that a lot because on the faculty, on the, how to say that, education, formal education, we are maybe more, I mean, in our conditions, maybe more concentrate on the main products of some solutions. And what I liked last night that I saw from and that I heard from the many students, they said we played in this process. We play. I mean, it means we did some game through that. It's not that we are doing. It is that idea to have some ideas, not to make so, how to say to very severe to some solution. To do that, yes, in the way that we need to do to produce something that is important. And maybe this is I was thinking about that. In the formal education that we have, for example, here in Montenegro, maybe we don't how to say to give the students more enough space for the playing, because we have very how to say strange concept of some syllabus. I mean, we have only 14 weeks to develop the project from the idea to do some solutions. I mean, to some ends. And maybe we don't have enough time for playing, and for that reason, that you already said in this short text on this brochure, is that some kind of workshops really helps somehow to students to be, how to say, more free, somehow to do something that maybe in the formal education we don't have, I say, time maybe for that, or some possibilities. Other question that I ask myself for the, I mean, just a couple of years is okay, we know that generally in education, architectural education, with that I can say like two types, more artistic and more engineer. And in Montenegro we are, for example, I mean, it should be probably for us very, I can say, dangerous to have the education more artistic. We really need to be in this condition. I mean, in a very small country with 600,000 people. I mean that we really need to be more also. I mean, that balance between artistic and engineer. At some time, it's not maybe easy to do that balance, because maybe we miss this playing in all that process. And another thing that I was questioning myself after this discussion also last night, it was because we are somehow in the faculty we are obligated to do something that we can call basic knowledge. And the question now is, I mean, in this all the time that everything is so fastly and the technology is here, I mean, every day, and everything is changing so fast. The question is, what is now the basic knowledge? I mean, from the very beginning, how to start with the students? Because I'm now, for example, I have the one new syllabus on the first year, and I was always questioning myself in front of them what they know and what they don't know, because I cannot follow how to say anymore how is their knowledge, because with the technology they have a lot of more information than before. And everything is changed every day, and also, I mean, how to say, to put us in the situation that we need to change, which is not easy. I mean, because you cannot follow this process very easy, because you don't know when the people from the secondary school came to the faculty what they really know, and because also they are coming from the different background. And it was that, from my point of view, that how to say, that core questions, the basic knowledge. And this is something between artistic and engineer, and also this that I said, playing, how to make that process more easy and more creative for them, not maybe to be so strong, because usually our students after 3 or 4 years they are going in some other universities, and they are very good there, which is very good. I mean, they are usually, I mean, very good students on this postgraduate studies, but they said, oh, it's easier here, it's easier now. Now it's easier than in our faculty, which means that maybe we are. I mean, I was wondering, maybe we are too strong with them. I don't know. It is that, but maybe something that we need to somehow change, or to make more softly, or or some way. It is basically what I was thinking to say for the beginning, and maybe we can continue. Thank you.
Vedran, we also mentioned this. Are we still having live stream? Yes. We also mentioned this last night. I mean, the Berlage, this was really kind of the big thing all the way through so many years, and at some point it stopped even functioning. I mean, there are reasons for that, so I just want to kind of, I wanted you to explain more, but also from the other side, you were very critical about Zagreb School of Architecture, that it's a very traditional school, unlike many schools around in the area. And what I wanted really for you to say, to kind of relate to, is how these schools could be reinvented. Or not even schools, but what is this maybe small shift that could help us reinvent the way we deal with knowledge?
Right. I mean, architectural education has been really historically sort of, you know, divided through a kind of polytechnic model and liberal arts model, maybe. So you can take ETH Zurich, this is the best polytechnic, and AA London as the best liberal. And Delft was very similar to ETH, and Hermann Herzberger didn't like it at all, right? Delft went through 1968, when students took over and fired all the professors, and only after 2 years, Hermann was invited as one possibly to continue teaching. When Hermann looked at the Berlage, or actually when Hermann looked in 1985, what to do about Aldo van Eyck being forced to retire. Then he reinvented INDESEM, International Design Seminar, a sort of workshop, and I was lucky and privileged to work with him. And then van Eyck came to give his lecture, a kind of retirement lecture. And Aldo came with a plastic trash bag on his head, TU Delft, and said, this is where I spent my 40 years, and they treated me as a garbage. And that was typical Aldo and his typical criticism on polytechnic model. Hermann worked hard, or we all worked hard, 1985, that's before the fall of the wall, to bring Russian students, American students, German students, Yugoslav students to INDESEM. And in 5 days, he worked not with the head of the school at that time, he worked with the student association, Stilos. So Stilos would run a parallel program in Delft, including INDESEM. INDESEM showed that you can have a fantastic environment in Delft if you move from polytechnic model. Of course, that would not be entirely possible. What was possible for Hermann, suddenly, incredibly, to establish his own institute, the Berlage. And of course, Berlage being something completely different, but something completely different, basing its sort of, let's say, logic on AA, on SCIARC, on Städel. It's been already operating many, many years, AA 150 years. And Hermann was very close to copy Californian architects which established SCIARC. So this kind of alternative, if you wish, model starts somehow to erasing these kind of, you know, liberal arts polytechnics and erasing formal, informal, and simply looking in new models of education. And I may say that Berlage really then somehow became pretty influential in really changing the curricula structures at formal polytechnical universities a bit around the world. Another, of course, strong impact was when Rem, and again Rem, made his kind of deal with Harvard, where he insisted to put in a contract letter, Rem Koolhaas will not teach design. He will do research. And this aspect of research came in then in a, let's say, formal GSD curriculum as something fundamental, as something important, as traveling with 7 students to Shenzhen, Pearl River Delta, where Marco is now doing incredible hotel, and trying to open up to the world a kind of new phenomenon, which was at that time, of course, Chinese global urbanization. So this is, in very short, your answer of, I would say, some sort of positive erasure of different borders, different clusters or compartmentalization of knowledges, and ultimately arguing that that's Alander's era polo, some form of synthesis, right? So what is a synthesis of a particular knowledge which you can make in order to educate architects, or in order to, you know, work with the young people which should become architects? Of course, you have always people like Marco, you know, and his people which are basically autodidact and who will absolutely make something fantastic, even being educated in Zagreb. And just to finish with Zagreb, at a certain moment, people from Platforma 981, which has been running almost a parallel program in Zagreb at the time, asked me to help them how they would, I don't know what was exactly the question. The question was how they should change the marking system. So how you get a mark from urbanism or architecture. And then I told them, look guys, you can't change the marking system in school in Zagreb. And I sent to them and I told them, keep it confidential. Here is 12 points why the school of Zagreb should be closed. And of course, these all 12 points leaked out. And then Jasmina Siljanovska from Skopje invited all of us or all of them, because I was not in, I was in the Netherlands, all the deans and associate deans from all the schools from what was then called, I don't know, basically from Ljubljana to Athens, including Bulgaria, for a kind of a big event. And she asked me to do a keynote, and of course I was reading my 12 points, why the school in Zagreb should be closed, and I saw all the deans doing, and Gabrielčić, and I think was Gabrielčić and Vodaleš from Ljubljana. They've been probably the best school in the region. They told me, you know, Vedran, we fail on 10 of your points. And my points being that, of course, they didn't change the curricula structure. Zagreb school still has a special cabinet for, I think, buildings in agriculture or, you know, housing. So it's still typologically divided. They only employed children, wives, and mistresses of the regular professors. That was another. Then Gabrielčić told me I can always make a picture in front of our school of Ljubljana. This is my family, this is his family. Anyway, and no library, no books, no this, no that. Anyway, that was maybe, this was year 2004. It was then too obvious. I think now some of these schools really improved and changed, and situation is, I think, slightly better. But that was my criticism. Then they basically then forbid me to give a lecture anymore in Zagreb, and Platforma organized my lecture with the title Rio de Janeiro, no stress, in front of the school. On the staircases, 400 students came out of 500. They played Girl from Ipanema. I showed my slides of Rio. And we proved that it's very good if you are forbidden, you know, or if somebody forbids you, that's a fantastic moment, then you will always invent something different.
Thank you, Vedran. And we'll go back to this kind of student participation, but what I wanted to ask Sasha, actually, we've been reading about Ravnikar's course, of course. You have been part of it, and you have continued this legacy as well. What we kind of witnessed that this school, Ravnikar, and other schools in this past time have somehow produced something that it's good design, not out of school, but out of people that were really part of the school, something that it's good design, good architecture, good city. We also talked about so much, we all do these days, about the MoMA exhibition, and this is also, you can really recognize some of these schools, these great schools of Yugoslavia within the exhibition. But what's also very, very evident, and it's also, there is a part of exhibition that's dedicated to this, that these architects went abroad. And these architects were actually trained abroad as well. And the way, why we have this great heritage is because they were really delivering on a level as anywhere else in the world. And this is not about following trends, it's just being really present at the time, which is very hard today, especially with slow systems that we have. So I really want you to kind of relate to this. So what you think is really different from then, or how we can maybe
I think things are not changing very much, always going slow and fast, and more complex and less complex, and less bureaucratic and more bureaucratic. I think that the most important is collecting experiences and study, and study, being interested at your environment, at people you meet, or you want to meet, or you see, and analyze what can you learn from them, what can you learn from environment. Every day you are learning. And I always said to my students, I'm not teaching anymore, that they are only collecting experiences. And design and architecture is a hybrid. So it's part of technology and technique is humanistic science and social science. But social is on one side psychology and sociology, on the other side is completely different economy. And everybody has its own value, or trying to develop a value, a system, and what would be most important, to connect. As we saw in the past, this school, as for example, promote a kind of design school. They put their strategy on a napkin testament, or napkin guidelines, but they just came to this point as many others did in the past or doing now. So I think that you have to start when you study either architecture or design. I would never separate design and architecture. I would not separate art and engineering, because every part is needed if you want to make innovation, and if you want to come to invention, to make something which is really new, then you come to the point that you made it something, and the environment will find you, will see that your proposal is better than the others. If you are working with the client should never expect that you sell something what he already know. The real serious client wants to accomplish his if he's good, of course, and educated, his dreams to make something new, something better. And Marco's story is a fantastic story. You go up and down and up and down and up and down, and then when you come to our age, then you a bit calm down and look like a Greek wise man come to the arena and watch the youth, how they train or discuss. And you try to, also you expect that somebody asks you something. Raunikar, my professor, always said, if you ask me, or if they ask me, but they never ask him, that was the problem. Because if they would ask him, they would get a message and material to food for thought. So I also don't see any big difference. There is a vertical from top to the bottom, from bottom up. And we need integration. We have to be part of politics. We have, but not being politician, because if you are politician, then you sell yourself, and
we lost.
Yeah, we shouldn't sell our principle, never ever.
We mentioned this once in Ljubljana when we talked about these processes. Economy is a huge part of the design process, if we talk about any kind of design. And actually you have shown this on your example, on your design, that economy and market are integrated into design as well. And this is something that is not thought enough maybe in schools.
Yeah, you are right. After we started the school in '84, 3 years after, I wrote down design management program and start teaching. But in this course, I invited all kinds of specialists. We went through the process from initiative, from idea, from the need of the user, and all the way up, not to the product, but to the user. Because we have to test it at the user, not at what is the doors of, let's say, factory or the shop. Because we have to go in public and look how the public use our product, our architecture. and then we can make feedback and improve it. It's a continuous process. Never stop.
Artyom, you're someone who kind of had these shifts in the environment, learning and working environment. You came from Moscow, you went to Marsh, if I'm correct, and then you ended up in Europe working for some big offices and then your office. And so you've been this kind of experience collector, as the professor mentioned, which is really important for kind of this self-education that maybe many of us do as well. But there is this kind of magic process that I'm kind of interested in and that I always try to address with students, where your experience you turn into idea, and then idea has to be turned into a project, and this is a process that you actually learn from working. So and Cosmos is kind of very good in this. So so I want to ask you a bit about this process, or how do you guys go from experience to idea, as you create your own projects as well, your own tasks, and then this goes into a project. It's really kind of a magic process.
Well, if we speak about education, I think nowadays we actually don't need so much universities. I mean, it's of course provocation, but the thing is, really all the information we need, we can get online. Any lecture, I mean, now it's actually even no need to go to any lecture of any good architect, because most of the lectures are repeated, so you can watch everything in YouTube, and it's much more comfortable position. You don't stand behind some column in a very bad ventilated space. It's in terms of like
that's why our video stream is more popular, as you see.
In terms of getting information, lectures are not needed. It's more social interaction and a way to meet new friends. Even though nowadays also people often get in touch first on Facebook, or see each other through Facebook, and then like, you are that guy, like I'm following. So and the same with the education. I think the most important part probably of university would be to inspire people, inspire students, but also I get a feeling that they have to be inspired by themselves. They have to be sick to get new information. They have to sick to build, to find out new facts, new professions. Otherwise, I mean, I never thought about how to rise this interest. More than that, I think if the student or the person doesn't burn by himself, nothing would help. Well, probably you can slightly improve, make him more professional, but it's a self-meditation. If you're interested, you have to burn yourself. You have to really get motivated. And speaking about the important knowledge, I think there are several things. I don't know. I'm difficult to list. First, what comes to my mind, you have to be very self-reflective and reflective to surrounding, and understand yourself not as like abstract professional, but actual player of society. So you look at the situation, you think, what's missing for you personally? Like, how would be great to live by yourself? And I think it's one of the tools to each task approach, like it would be your personal task, your personal problem, and make it very personal for yourself. And then position yourself as a user and try to be more reflective to surrounding, because even though the system could look very set, very stable, in fact there's so much direction of development, and it will develop, and just like we don't know which direction. The other thing, it's also important to be very honest to yourself. Honest to yourself and honest to reality. And especially nowadays, if we're speaking about architecture now in a bit of a danger of being captured in virtual world. Not only in terms of presentation, but in terms of representation. Most of the images we never see in real. Most of the buildings we never see in real. We see only in images, and we start to design images, not the buildings, not the experiences. And that's also important thing, to keep yourself grounded, and then in the end, like, to remember, or like really experiment with typologies where the experience doesn't make any sense and you only design the views. Or if it's the sequence of experience, if it's like certain scenario, to dedicate enough time to make it interesting, to make it architecture, because I've seen many times, I mean, I think it's quite popular now, there is a very efficient technological schemes on top of which architects apply on certain moment interesting patterns or whatever, and then it receives powerful enough image, but the experience of the building is very poor, or like at least or expected or generic, I don't know, poor probably is too strong word. And how to do like all, if we come back to the office of young architects, I think of course like everyone got his own way, but I also think one of the most crucial things is to find partners, because the way is so tough, which you never imagined this, probably I never imagined it from the very beginning, and find someone with whom you keep inspiring each other, keep working each other, and supporting each other. That's probably, it's like a family life almost.
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest challenges, just as much as, you know, dealing with clients and everything else. It's one of the greatest challenges to really have people to work with that you can kind of develop with all together. And I mean, this also brings me to another very kind of important point, how to keep these people inspired or present, or I don't know. I mean, for example, I mean, I always compare to apps, whatever I, of course, think through, because this is something that we deal with every day. And for example, when we have a call for students to participate in apps, we have this really large international group of people that are always interested. And we have a lot of applications, and this is really great process. I mean, for, you know, being in the middle of nowhere, not linked to any kind of institution that deals with architecture or anything like this. So this has been really kind of great process to come to this point for a small place such as apps. But as you know, I mean, I don't know how many students are in architectural school in Podgorica, approximately.
At this moment?
Yeah.
At this moment, about 200 something, 250 maybe, something like that.
And so we have 2 architectural schools. In one I teach personally, and then we have another one that is public school, and we have none of the students here. So this is really a huge question always for me. How do we have them involved? I mean, is it really, what inspires them? How, and you know, it's not like apps is pretty much the only event of this kind in Montenegro. So this is always a question for me. What does keep them motivated? Or is it really self-learning that really to control? For me, self-learning is really important. This is how I you know, kind of pushed myself through. But it's really also going, visiting people. I mean, this was really a huge part of it. You know, being within this kind of network, always doing the conversation, always kind of participating. I mean, maybe Vedran, you, I mean, you've been a great leader.
No, this is what we are, shall we say, suffering when we organize these kind of lectures. I'm working in a crown hall of Mies, and we have public lectures by famous, really excellent architects, perfect lectures. And our students are beside working, not coming for a lecture.
I've seen
You know, and that's maybe new time in which everything is available. I'm now teaching a course at IIT, like learning from Bella, and then I'm editing Zaharem, Danny Libeskind, whatever lectures, and then I show them the clips and enter a critical debate with students. Then they write about it. I think that's a kind of way to link digital with actual and link a kind of level of understanding which goes beyond when you are on your own with the interface. Being on your own with the interface is good, but not really. And I remember Peter Eisenman, which I met first time in 1983, and some computers been there, and Peter said, I cannot get drunk with a computer, and I cannot have a sex with a computer. And computer, I will never will replace the real experience.
Technology went so much
Yeah, that was 1983. And yeah, I am often frustrated. I don't know, I invite Fernando Romero. Fernando Romero is my really good Mexican friend. He is building the most advanced building at the moment probably on earth, which is Airport of Mexico City with Lord Foster. And our students are not interested in listen to Fernando, what Fernando has to say. And then, of course, I take him for a dinner. I'm a bit embarrassed. And I wonder, you know, where we are at the moment with, you know, staging and experimenting with the new models in education. And then you see that some form of, shall I say, engagement, the higher engagement of students in an educational process is terribly necessary and needed. They have to feel that this is their, you know, work. And I really had some, I don't know, experiments. I'm teaching MCHEP, Miss Crown Hall America's Prize, something what we established for the best house. But then my students are working with the architects. They are curating the show. They're physically building the show. And then that's a class. And such classes are much more popular among the students if they are totally almost equal to me in what we do. And okay, these are maybe students on a little higher level of education, but doesn't matter. I think they need to feel some sort of horizontality, you know. And in the Netherlands it's very easy because everything is horizontal in the Netherlands, including hierarchies. In America this is impossible because you tell me what to do and then I do. And did I get A? And then I told them I don't give marks, you have to work, right? This is where I see some new models which could really work and which could really work on a kind of experiential level.
So is this what you're implementing in the center of Rijeka?
Oh yes. No, Rijeka New Center will be simply a super critical debate about how to build cities in Alpe Adria, let's call that Alpe Adria region, and how to do something what our friend, you know, Aimona was showing today. And I was incidentally the president of the jury for the Skanderberg Square. And I needed to tell Danny Libeskind that his design is more or less garbage, and the design of 51N4E is fantastic. I know Danny very well. He was teaching at the Berlage. He came with his sculpture. He made his square, and these fantastic Joachim and Freek and Belgium kids came with a Magritian, you know, surrealist idea, which Eddie Rama, as a mayor at that time and as a painter by education, really incredibly associated with. And here, I think she didn't really said a bit about these kind of charismatic figures like Eddie Rama, who was mayor of Tirana for 12 years, and now it's a prime minister. And this, I know him very well because for 8 years he declared me his personal advisor for urban plan. I never get any contract or whatever. But he is the most intelligent politician in this part of the world, but by far. And now you have an incredibly good situation, and I will try to make at least an essay comparing Skanderberg Square in Tirana and what happened in Skopje. And you see that Skopje was a part of very enlightened socialist state with very good education, and now they went in a darkness, you know. And Albania is going like this. So here we have to understand that, you know, we have to, here we talk about political advocacy, here we talk about understanding of what is needed for a country to go further. Okay, many people could say, yes, but Eddie, you come to Tirana, it was end of the world, you paint a bit and now it looks shiny. No, 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 no. It is a very strategic, super international plan how to create, you know, the city where everybody is invited, where everybody feels as pictures, see possibility to, you know, create his or her own corner, where in the same way the entire place can work as a big collective, of course, political propaganda stage. So this kind of, and just to tell you, every session of presentations to the jury in Tirana for these projects has been directly televised by all the stations in Tirana. Our discussion was, of course, behind a closed door, but we all went in front of the television to explain to the public why, for example, this project is the best project. So form of modernization and form of education, which Rama performed in only half of generation, is absolutely amazing. And you know, if you could do that on a political level, you must be able to do that on, let's say, educational level as well. And that's a kind of, I think, a knowledge which I am kind of trying to grasp in the last couple of years, how really education must become much more linked with the life, with direct issues, direct action, and direct experience. Then I think we are going somewhere.
I can kind of relate to this because, I mean, education is not only education of students or future architects, education is education of general public and politicians. But this is really, I think general public is the most important. And especially, I mean, we see that here, that how important this is. So televising this process would really make a difference. I have to mention then now, even though I promise I'm never gonna kind of get tricked into talking about this again, the process of Dom Revolucije that happened in Montenegro recently, where we actually had a huge campaign on how to really educate the public, how to get the public on our side. In 2014, it's Dom Revolucije is the building that we presented in Venice Biennale that got a huge attention, and with this international attention, we were kind of encouraged to move further, convince even the politicians. So there was a competition, there was a new project on reconstruction of Dom Revolucije, and Marko Mušić, the author of original Dom Revolucije, even we invited him to get involved in the process. Of course, this was very difficult communication with him, but then at the same, this went through, the project has been accepted, it has been very well accepted in general international discourse as well, especially shown in Chicago Biennale and so on, and then the construction started. The construction started, but it really wasn't according to the project. What happened is they pretty much destroyed Dom Revolucije during the construction, so it cannot be, you know, there anymore. So it's really a dead end. It's the end of an icon, the end of this great heritage. When I'm trying to explain this to someone from a general public, it's like, usually I say it's like somebody took down the cathedral in middle of Kotor 200 years ago. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. This is how valuable this building was. And so this is one thing. Another thing is that I haven't seen a single person in public in Montenegro, architects, institutions, whoever, politicians, giving any kind of public reaction. And this is really, I mean, this is huge failure on education, on architecture of general public.
Yeah, but what happened publicly? Yeah, everybody should be interested because it's his or her environment. He's contributing with through taxes, and if my young colleagues say that school is not needed, why we are paying, why we have a social state, and social state has responsibility to educate people, and the education must be the right education. Everybody who is responsible for education, for economy, take responsibility. And if you study, you have, as a student, you have a responsibility to your mother, to your father, because they invest in you. They just don't throw money away. Why? Why? And responsibility is important thing on every level. And during the education, student must take responsibilities because they have to get tasks not only for marks to make to do their exams, but they are responsible for their education. Otherwise, they should go somewhere else to use their precious time for something else. If you don't need education for architecture, come on. You are responsible. In old times, in Greek times, if you made a failure, you pay as architect. Who pay now for failures? Who? It's never an issue of public discussion, but we and the others, the doctors of medicines, economists, sociologists, etc., and politics are making failures. Everybody of us is making failure. But then you learn something and improve your method, because you have to be better and better and better. Otherwise, you step down and take some other things which are not responsible and not harm your environment, your relatives, your acquaintances, your society, etc., community, etc., etc., etc. And you throw the garbage on the street, you took responsibility. You shouldn't do that, because you pay for somebody who collect garbage with certain reason, because we want to divide our jobs, and everybody should do what he or she has to do.
Sasha, it is, yeah, totally understandable what you are talking about. However, you know, I tried yesterday to explain how post-modernity entered, you know, into our world, introducing really instability, disappearance of great narratives. And in America, we had really incredible discussion introduced by Bernie Sanders, right? America is the most wealthy country in the world. And to introduce what Sanders was saying, free education for every American student would be a piece of cake. No way. to introduce, you know, investment in American infrastructure, public infrastructure, would be incredibly simple. No way. Here are some forces, call them whatever, which are really obstructing what you are arguing, you know. Obstructing ultimately the even concept of responsibility, you know. And this is then a way where, you know, serve the waves of, you know, new times. And that's what I think we have to a certain extent, or we should to a certain extent almost acknowledge, not accept, the kind of disappearance of responsibility. And ultimately, they're going to tell you it's no one's responsibility in Nikšić to first understand that this is incredible building, secondly, understand that your projects, which been presented in Chicago, my God, I remember when Mark Lee was introducing your project and making a horrible mistake that it was done during the Ceausescu time, and then I say, Mark, no, it was not Ceausescu. Oh, Vedran, I know, sorry. You know, but why I wanted, what I'm trying to say, not to defend anyone, that the level in which you know, argue your mission, APSS mission, is on a so incredibly high, sophisticated level, which I accept and I like, but perhaps a little bit difficult, you know, in terms of a direct sort of expectation of some sort of direct result. Something what took Andrea Rusan, you know, 10 years or maybe even 15 years, and he is now, and he will have perhaps, you know, 2,000 architects in Lisinski in a month. It needs fertilization, you know. It needs some sort of grounding into particular culture. And by no means you should stop. I know you can't. And by all means, you should continue. And if I just look today through all the lectures from a photographer who argue almost that architecture might not be important anymore, you know, towards Sasha, incredible lecture of how you construct a kind of national culture, national identity, and you know, how you move one country towards design, to this incredible kind of critical comparative, I like critical comparative approach between Switzerland and Montenegro, you know, and then the presentations of the practicing architects. I think these all together could be amazing, you know, syllabus for a good year at one architectural school, you know, where students will learn, I argue, 5 times more than in a regular syllabus, and would kind of understand the kind of forces which are really different, which are not anymore, you know, possible culture of consensus. That's only in the Netherlands, but not even in the Netherlands anymore, where we really learn from differences, you know. But then some form of moderation is necessary. Some form of moderation in terms of you do, you know, editing, presenting, communicating. That's totally necessary. And this is where we should use our media, you know, for this kind of direct, I don't like to call that education of the general public, more like a dialogue with the general public.
Slavica,
I wanted to say that I remember now that famous Froebel's gift from the end of the 19th century that was some kind of the core of the modernity, and I just wanted to finish with that we need education from the very, very beginning. I mean, from the before primary school, about architecture, about space. It means that we will, I mean, on the faculty level, just already have some people, some individuals with some opinion about space, with some feeling, with some sensibility for the space and architecture. Just,
Thank you. Artyom, would you like to add something so we can...
Well, there was so many things said, so I even don't know which one to focus on. Well, regarding the education, when I was saying close the university, I didn't mean that we have to close them. I mean, all the knowledge, the one who's desired can receive without going to university. It's available now. There's a great advantage of the contemporary time. At the same time, university also, there is a risk, there is some danger in also it's a bit of provocation now in some universities, because they can fake knowledge. Just the fact that you've been 5 years in university, that does mean you learn something. And if you receive afterwards, especially it's in Soviet and post-Soviet countries, very popular that everyone who got to university got to finish and graduated and then receive some paper. And then it's fake, because this person assumed to be professional even though he is not, and probably he's not even interested. And in these terms, self-education, then you educate yourself only, and you take responsibilities and you're in charge, and no paper will prove your are you responsible or not. It's only your, no one would in university teach you that you have to go for demonstration if someone ruining the building. It's your own private responsibilities and you have to learn by yourself. But I mean, I'm not saying that in the way personal education, personal contact is the most efficient. It's absolutely true. I'm just saying that also we have to understand the advantage of contemporary time when everyone can get anything, any information, and we have to also appreciate it. And speaking about this information, about keeping people motivated, now we also, let's say universities or educators or teachers, they're in competition with not other universities and other teachers, but also with many other interesting things, because so all the information available at the same time to each person. And all of us, we are competing to drag attention of the person we're interested in, and to make this information as compressed, as powerful as possible, so they can really get it immediately. Because now it's almost impossible to read the books, because so much books written by every day, and all of them immediately online. So if the article, for example, is too long or not promoted properly, it's my personal problem. I have so much of them saved on iPhone, read later, and never read. And that's the idea. So probably, I mean, it sounds horrible, but probably we don't have any more time for book. Book is a luxury. We have to compress all the ideas, out of 500 pages to 10 pages, and out of 10 pages to 3 sentences. I don't know how is it better to do, but we also have to, all of us have to be aware that we all in a big competition for attention of the people, and we have to learn how to drag it, how to involve people, how to get them inspired, instead of them being focused on something else. And I think this inspiration we can mainly propose by experience. And because again, with what I said about these postponed texts, if it's just normal lecture, someone would think, okay, I will look it on YouTube later, and never will look. We have to propose some experience which he can receive only now, here, with us, and never would never happen again. It's something where he should not miss, or she shouldn't miss. And yeah, it's just I think probably not very, but it's kind of new informational condition on which we have to be kind of aware and rethink how to operate in these conditions.
Thank you, Artyom. This was
maybe I considered myself when I was teaching as a coach, who is caring about individual and understanding their problems. And then when we came at the beginning on conceptual phase, I asked them to make a big mind mapping with the sketches. And all kind of visual means, you know, you can cut a piece of paper or draw or put down a photography, etc., etc., a kind of mind mapping. And then I discovered their identity, their personality. And it was crucial because everybody was different. They didn't compete among each other. I knew what and where are their better, and I led them in that direction. And so I made different graduates which came up like stars. As for example, Nika Zupans is completely different. Miha Klinar is completely, or Jure Mikloc, completely different people. They have also their own backgrounds. It's interesting. Jure Mikloc is machine engineering high school graduates, and then came to university. You can saw it that what was his process of education. Nika Zupans had a fantastic family environment, intellectuals, father was engineer, etc., etc. And there were some students who want to come to my seminar, and the others didn't accept them. I said, come on, come to me. And they were brilliant. So you are a kind of coach and responsible for them. But they are responsible to you as well. This is two ways road.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. I will conclude with this, and I would thank you for being here, for being patient enough, for being here all day and many days. I have to, in the end, thank to all the students from APS that were really, really, really good and really fun and really hardworking and really smart and innovative, and that kind of made this place again this kind of magical experience that we absolutely love in APS. We're gonna have a party soon, so everyone can go there at 8. If it's not raining, I don't know if it's raining or not, we'll see now. But also I invite some of you who haven't seen the projects that you go and see the projects, and we can give some tours. And thank you to APS team who has been amazing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.